Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseillère Plante. Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Kitts. Councillor Skolsky.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Desroches. Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
We have quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the City Council meeting of May 27th. Are those carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I will note the communications on the agenda. We did receive regrets from Councillor Luloff, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor Desroches. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you. That the report from the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation entitled Annual General Meeting of the Shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, OCHC, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, Report 36, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee, Report 24, Finance and Corporate Services Committee, Report 36, Planning and Housing Committee, Report 66, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of May 27th, 2026 be received and considered. Be it further resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider Built Heritage Committee Report 32 rising from the Built Heritage Committee meeting of June 9th, 2026 as the report was not included on the draft agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Is that carried? All right. We have the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation Annual General Meeting. We will hold that. From Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee, 11.1 is the motion from Councillor Hill regarding a request for provincial action on lithium-ion battery safety. Is that carried? Item 11.2 is the Ottawa Fire Service 2025 Annual Report. I know Councillor Brockington has a direction related to that, which we can deal with quickly if everybody is okay with that. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. That's appreciated. There's some context here. The 2025 OFS annual report identified a 12% increase in rescue incidents over the previous year, including a growing number of complex and resource-intensive emergency responses, such as ice and water rescues, trench rescues, and structural collapse responses. These types of incidents place firefighters, paramedics, police, and emergency assets at significant operational risk. OFS has demonstrated success in reducing unnecessary emergency responses through targeted public education measures, including the false alarm reduction bylaw approved during this term of council, which is beginning to show positive results. However, there remains a need to strengthen public awareness regarding personal responsibility, emergency preparedness, and the appropriate use of 911 services, while ensuring that residents do not hesitate to contact emergency services in legitimate emergency situations. So the direction is as follows. 1, continue to expand public education and outreach efforts related to ice safety, water safety, and the appropriate use of emergency response services in coordination with Ottawa Fire Services and Public Information and Media Relations staff. 2, as part of the planned review of the Ottawa Fire Services fees and charges bylaw, currently anticipated for the 2027 legislative agenda, examine and report back on potential options for cost recovery or administrative fees associated with certain non-emergency or avoidable rescue responses. And 3, ensure that any proposed measures or public messaging maintain a balanced approach that prioritizes public safety and does not discourage residents or visitors from calling 911 in genuine emergency situations. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Are staff comfortable with that direction?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. So then that item, the annual report, is that received? Item 11.3 is the Councillor's report from Conseillère Plante on strengthening protections against construction encroachment and enforcing Committee of Adjustment conditions. There is an amending motion related to that, which again we can deal with quickly, if everybody's okay with that. Councillor King, I believe you're introducing that motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and I'll just read in the resolutions. Therefore, be it resolved that the recommendations contained in the report be amended to include a review of measures available to address prolonged construction inactivity, incomplete construction projects, and situations commonly referred to as construction by neglect, where properties remain in a partially completed, unsecured, or deteriorated state for extended periods of time. Be it further resolved that staff review opportunities to strengthen requirements related to site maintenance, screening, and construction fencing for long-term construction sites, including consideration of enhanced standards for visually appealing fencing and hoarding in urban residential areas, heritage districts, traditional main streets, and other sensitive community settings. Be it further resolved that staff examine potential enforcement tools and best practices from other municipalities to encourage timely completion of construction projects and reduce prolonged impacts on surrounding neighborhoods.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Plante, did you want to say something to that?
Yes, my computer just died. Just give me a second, sorry. But I revived it. Thank you. I just wanted to speak to it. Is that okay to do right now? Perfect, okay. Mayor and colleagues, I am pleased to bring forward this report today on strengthening protections against construction encroachment and improving enforcement on Committee of Adjustment conditions, and I also want to thank my colleague, Councillor King, for contributing to it as well. I want to start by being very clear. We support infill and intensification. We need more housing in Ottawa, and especially in neighborhoods where we already have the infrastructure, transit access, and walkable communities to support growth. But residents should not have to sacrifice their safety, their property, or their peace of mind in order for that growth to happen. What we are seeing more and more often are situations where neighboring residents are left carrying all the risk and all the burden when construction goes wrong. We heard from residents dealing with damaged fences, excavators crossing into private property, blocked driveways, debris falling into adjacent lots, and serious safety concerns that have left people feeling powerless in their own homes. One story that stayed with me throughout this process came from Laurier Avenue in Sandy Hill. During a demolition project, debris repeatedly entered the neighboring property and eventually severed a gas line, damaging electrical infrastructure and forcing residents to leave their home for weeks. We also heard concerns around hazardous materials and possible asbestos exposure. Residents reported more than $20,000 in damages, but what struck me was not the damage itself, it was how difficult it was for residents to figure out who could actually help them in real time. And what residents repeatedly told us is that the current system feels circular and reactive. They call bylaw, they're referred elsewhere, they call police, they're told it's a civil matter. Meanwhile, the damage is already done. This report is about addressing those enforcement gaps. One of the key recommendations is asking staff to explore a framework similar to what exists in Toronto, where municipalities have clear authority around construction encroachment, restoration obligations, and enforcement tools. We are also asking the province to modernize the Trespass to Property Act so that it actually reflects the realities of intensification in 2026. Right now, the legislation simply does not keep pace with the way communities across Ontario are growing and changing. The second major issue raised in the report is the lack of meaningful enforcement on Committee of Adjustment conditions. Residents participate in consultations in good faith, compromises are reached, variances are approved with conditions attached, whether that's landscaping, setbacks, privacy measures, and then too often those conditions are ignored without consequence. This undermines the confidence not just in the project, but in our planning systems. I also want to mention that during our public consultation meeting, which included staff from Bylaw, Building Code, Services, Planning, Heritage, and my office, residents heard directly that many of these enforcement gaps persist because municipalities simply do not have the legislative tools or authority they need to intervene effectively and proactively. I think that was an important moment in this process because it reinforces that residents are not imagining these frustrations. They are real jurisdictional and legislative limitations. I also want to acknowledge my office reached out proactively to industry stakeholders for feedback for this report because it was important to me that this conversation not be one-sided. I want to thank Jason Berggraf of the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association for his thoughtful submission and delegation at committee. This report is not anti-development. It fundamentally is about creating clear rules, greater predictability, and better accountability about how development occurs. Responsible builders know and follow the rules, communicate with neighbors, and work hard to minimize impacts on surrounding properties. I also want to recognize that this is not just a Ward 12 issue. As intensification continues across Ottawa, these conversations are becoming increasingly relevant in neighborhoods across the city. We need a balanced conversation about how we support housing growth while maintaining public confidence in the process. Je tiens à remercier tous les membres du personnel qui ont
would like to
contribué à
thank
cet
all the
rapport
members
avec
of personnel who
énormément d'ouverture et de
contributed to this
collaboration. Merci
report with
particulièrement aux équipes des services de
I would like to
protection
thank
d'urgence,
the
des services de
protection
planification, de
services,
la
planning
l'aménagement et du
services,
bâtiment,
as
des
well
services de règlements
as
municipaux, code du bâtiment et du patrimoine pour leur
bylaw
expertise et leur
services.
présence lors
Thank
des
you for your
consultations.
expertise and your
Je veux aussi
presence during the
remercier les résidents et les
consultations.
résidentes qui ont
I would
participé
like
au
to thank the
processus de
residents who
consultation,
were
qui ont
part of
partagé
the
des
consultation
témoignages parfois
process
extrêmement
and
difficiles
were
et très personnels. Plusieurs
very
personnes nous ont parlé de dommages
touched
matériels,
by what they've
d'insécurité, de
done.
stress, d'évacuation
We want to make
temporaire de
sure
leurs
that
domiciles et le sentiment d'être
when
abandonnés
they're
dans un
stressed and they have
système
to
où personne ne
evacuate
semble
their
réellement
residents,
responsable.
we were not able to find a responsible. It's not easy to testify in this type of situation. And I would like to thank Cameron in my office for writing this report after consultation and do the follow-up. It's a very complex situation. We had to add many meetings with different services within the city. Thank you very much to the staff and to you, Mr. Mayor.
Motion, is that carried? And the item is amended, is that carried? All right, from Finance and Corporate Services Committee, the 2026 capital adjustments and closing of projects, city tax and rate supported. Is that carried? Item 12.2 is the 2026 Q1 tax transit and rate supported programs operating capital budget status update. Is that received? We will hold item 12.3. Item 12.4 is the Paramedic West Deployment Facility Procurement Process. Is that carried?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one comment on that one.
Yep. Okay, yeah, and then I'll ask again on the vote. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to speak in behalf of this recommendation because first and foremost, this facility is about public safety and ensuring that our emergency services keep pace with growth. For Barrhaven, South Ottawa, and the west end of the city, this facility matters. These are some of the fastest growing parts of Ottawa, and as our communities grow, our emergency services has to grow with it. Residents expect that when the call for help comes, the system is positioned to respond quickly, reliably, and effectively. A Paramedic West deployment facility will strengthen the overall paramedic network by placing resources closer to major growth areas, and that's good for Barrhaven, it's good for South Ottawa, and it's good for the city as a whole. Better deployment capacity in the west and south helps improve operational coverage, supports our frontline paramedics, and adds reliance to the citywide emergency response system. The recommendation before us today allows staff to take the next responsible step, moving through a three-stage procurement process, a request for qualifications, request for proposals, and then negotiations and agreement, to identify the right proponent for this important public-private partnership project. So I support this recommendation. It protects the city's ability to run a proper competitive process, evaluate qualified proponents, and move us closer to delivering emergency services, infrastructure that Barrhaven, South Ottawa, and the entire city will need as we continue to grow. But I do want to highlight that for a facility like this to be successful, access cannot be treated as secondary. Paramedic vehicles need safe, efficient, and reliable movement in and off the site. The road network has to support the operational requirements of the facility, and realigning McKenna-Casey Road will be an important part of ensuring that this facility functions properly, supports response readiness, and integrates well with the surrounding transportation system. I'd like to confirm with both Chief Poirier and the transportation staff that the realignment of McKenna-Casey Road is being duly considered as part of the process, and that it will be functionally aligned with this important project.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, could you repeat the question, Councillor?
Functionally, I'm interested to know that the realignment of McKenna-Casey Road is a core component of the of this project.
Mr. Mayor, we could take that away and look at it as part of the project, and I'll work with my colleagues in infrastructure services and planning as part of the overall project for the West Deployment Facility.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So again, is that carried? Okay, Councillor Menard, were you going to dissent? I saw you turn your mic on before. Okay, thank you. All right. 12.5 is the Municipal Land Strategy Surplus Land Declaration Authority to transfer city-owned lands for housing. Is that carried? 12.6 is the Affordable Housing Community Improvement Plan. Is that carried?
Consent.
Noted. 12.7 is the declaration of surplus and sale of 1601 Prince of Wales Drive to Carillon Cooperative Housing Incorporated. Is that carried? From Planning and Housing Committee, 13.1 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 508 Edgeworth. I know Councillor Kavanagh, you wanted to speak to that. Do you want to hold it or just? Yeah, okay, we'll hold that. Item 13.2 is the Housing Accelerator Fund Fourth Tranche Delegated Authority. Is that carried? We will hold 13.3. From Built Heritage Committee, 14.1 is the designation of 575 Island Park Crescent. Is that carried? Councillor Leeper?
Thanks. I just had some comments to make around that one, so feel free to either hold it or go now.
Hold it, sure. Let's hold it. Okay. And then there was a request to lift the Adisoke project update from the bulk consent agenda. So we will hold that item, but the rest of the bulk consent agenda, is that carried? All right, so let us return to the annual general meeting of the shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing. And I'll invite the team from OCH to come forward and make their presentation. Bienvenue, Stéphane. Bonjour. And Councillor Kavanagh, thank you again for chairing the board of OCH.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, bonjour. Welcome to the Ottawa Community Housing Annual General Meeting with its shareholder, Ottawa City Council. I want to recognize that Ottawa is built on traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Their culture and present continues to nurture this land. OCH homes and communities are located on this territory, and we offer this acknowledgement as a reminder of our commitment to equity and inclusion and to listening and learning as we carry out our work mindful of this shared history. I have served on the OCH board for 8 years, including as chair since 2022, and I want to thank my fellow councillors Plante, Councillor Carr and Councillor Gower for their service on the board for the past 4 years. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your input. I also want to recognize the OCH tenants whose lived experience is a powerful reminder of why our work matters. I've learned so much from tenants, and one thing that sticks in my mind when I have conversation that I have, especially with parents and mothers, is that they want what all parents want, opportunities and a better future for their children. That's why community housing, whether supportive, social, or affordable, is more than housing. It's essential public infrastructure, and it supports health, dignity, safety, stability, and inclusion. Operating at arm's length to the city, OCH's strategic priorities are closely tied to the Council's priorities, including the implementation of the 10-year Housing and Homelessness Plan. Their role in both building and preserving community housing is fundamental in our city, and I have a deep appreciation of their work. With an aging portfolio, maintaining existing homes is essential and ensure that they are safe, livable, and affordable for the long term. That's
the reason why the Council's leadership is so important.
I want to thank my Council colleagues for approving an interim capital strategy that enables OCH to refinance its portfolio and access up to $133 million between 2026 and 2028. This will support ongoing and critical capital repairs and energy efficiency improvements in the short term, while we work towards long-term solutions with all orders of government. Being a leader in sustainability, OCH is a strong contributor to the city's climate goals. In existing homes, their capital repairs include energy upgrades such as heat pumps, air makeup units, solar panels, LED retrofits. This helps to reduce the overall operating costs as well. With new housing developments, they bring in advanced features like geothermal heating and cooling and wastewater heat recovery, helping to lower emissions and offering lower and more predictable utility costs for tenants. At a time when many are struggling with the cost of living, including not being able to afford private market rents, the need to protect and strengthen community housing has never been more important. I'm proud that OCH remains a key delivery partner, collaborating with the nonprofit and private sector and working with the city to help align investments where they can to have the greatest impact. I want to thank the Board of Directors and to our CEO, Stéphane Giguère, and his team for their commitment and leadership. And now I'd be pleased to invite Stéphane to share highlights from the annual report. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cavada. Bonjour, Maire Sutcliffe et les membres du Conseil. I'm pleased to be here to present Ottawa Community Housing's 2025 annual report. At OCH, our focus is clear: supporting the community housing needs of the city and contributing to a strong system that serves all residents. This year, the annual report is a story about the way OCH delivers community housing, and now we focus on what matters the most: maintaining our 15,500 homes, increasing the supply of affordable housing, improving housing stability for all tenants. We also welcome the city's ongoing efforts to streamline development processes, recognizing that strong alignment between priorities, delivery, and funding is essential. People who call OCH home are at the heart of our work. Families, seniors, children, youth, newcomers, people working on or living on fixed incomes. OCH, like many housing providers, lays a foundation that helps people move forward and supports them throughout different stages of life. One example is Kathy. She experienced a major event and was not able to work anymore, so she moved into OCH. Over the past 6 years, living with OCH helped her rebuild her life and give back to her own community. That's the impact of stable and affordable housing. Today, she volunteers in the community garden, serves as a vice president of her tenant association, and has founded a food pantry that serves over 80 tenants every week. We are to housing what Hydro Ottawa is to utilities. We are both owned by the city and responsible for delivering essential services. OCH plays a critical role in delivering the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. This is because a housing delivery goes way beyond construction. It requires the ability and the expertise for planning, financing, building, operating, and maintaining and preserving housing over the long run. When it comes to investing in affordable housing, OCH brings over 20 years of experience, a proven track record, and the expertise to deliver housing and partnerships that support people and communities all across Ottawa. Every investment made through OCH delivers public value. For example, in 2025, $63 million was invested to improve existing homes. 700 affordable homes are currently under construction. An affordable housing debt funding pilot was approved by Council. OCH has its first infrastructure funding application through Ontario Building Faster Fund approved to advance on city-owned land at Etherington New Build. More recently, Prime Minister Carney and Mayor Sutcliffe visited one of our sites to announce the first allocation of funding through Build Canada Homes. This is what strong alignment and partnerships look like. Our role in community housing continues to evolve. A small number of our tenants are living with complex needs and will continue to require a greater level of support. That's why we co-led the Health and Housing Symposium earlier this year. We're working towards a more coordinated and integrated response across all sectors. OCH currently works with over 100 partners, including about 50 on-site service providers, to share expertise and improve outcomes for the tenants. We should be proud of the progress made in 2025, including advancing our complex care housing strategy, as well as launching the Bumblebee initiative, bringing sectors together. Greater stability can lead to fewer crises, and fewer crises can support safer communities while reducing costs for everyone. As a trusted housing provider, OCH is often leveraged to share our expertise or lend our services to partners across the public and private sector here in Ottawa, across Canada, and abroad. I take great pride of the work and leadership that our teams do to support tenants and the broader sector. There's always more work ahead, but we can go further when we all work together. I want to thank all of our employees, our incredible work done by our board of directors, our committee members, our partners, city councilors, the City of Ottawa team and staff participating with us daily to achieve our goals. Again, we, through that collaboration, know that we can make OCH better. On behalf of nearly 33,000 residents, je veux vous dire merci beaucoup encore une fois.
On behalf of all of the residents, I would like to thank you. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for providing affordable housing to the ones that needs it here in Ottawa. Thank you so much, Stéphane.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for your presentation today, the annual report. Appreciate the work that all members of Ottawa Community Housing do every day, hundreds of colleagues, and River Ward is certainly no stranger to Ottawa Community Housing. We have thousands of residents who benefit from the housing that's provided, and my office appreciates the professional relationship that we have with you, Mr. Giguère, and your staff. We hear a number of issues, as you might imagine. We have residents in homes and towers, in newer stock, older homes. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that we hear on an ongoing basis is just the state of the unit, the home that people are living in, and the timelines associated with getting certain repairs or maintenance done. Could you just talk about this as a priority for you as an organization? Can you talk about whether you're resourced sufficiently to deal with the demands of maintenance of your units, and anything you want to share today that's relevant? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. This is a very important question about the quality services for Ottawa Community Housing. We take great pride in benchmarking our operations, looking at the private sector and other also landlords. In fact, I was recently at the rental housing conference amongst landlords like the Minto of the world and others. We are following pretty much the same building standards. We're looking at priorities as well between fixing a door that is squeaking to a flood in a building. You can appreciate that we will go with the flood and the emergencies. Having said that, in terms of the state of repair, it's important to recognize that the portfolio and most of the portfolios in Ottawa, not only at OCH, but amongst many housing providers as well, are aging, averaging now 55 years old. This is where it's important, and you heard me earlier talking about $67 million being invested. Our math are that on capital repair per door, we should be investing around $5,000 a year. To maintain that pace, we need council. We need your support for seeking funding with the federal government, provincial government under programs like COCHI. It's very important. And working with the residents as well. There are some upkeep that can be done jointly with the residents, and there are others where they require the landlord. So it's always important. And again, with an aging population, an aging portfolio, we need to be even more proactive.
Great, thank you. I'll just end by shout out on the Shearwater project, which is a construction development in River Ward, where 9 units that were end of life were taken down, and a building probably 5 times larger number of units is going in on that land and some additional land that we have. Do you just want to remind me the completion date of this project and when we'll be able to celebrate? I think it's 45 or 48 more units for members of our city to call home.
Yeah, this is a very exciting initiative where it's an infill for Ottawa community housing. We're looking to see in the first quarter of 2027 the residents moving in. We are at 70% completion as we speak right now, so we're going to what is called the envelope and around the building systems and all the systems that will be required to finalize. And it does touch on something that you just said earlier about your question about how do we maintain. We also need to replace in some instances. So it's important that we have the support when it comes time to do repair, maintenance, divestiture, and densification of the site. And to your point, we go from 9 homes to 45 on the same exact site. So that's incredible.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Stefan. Thank you very much, Teresa, for the work that you're both doing with Ottawa Community Housing. It is such an important part of our city. And just speaking as the chair of the Planning and Housing Committee, I want to thank Ottawa Community Housing for building in a private market where building has significantly slowed down. Ottawa Community Housing is getting shovels in the ground, and I'm grateful for that. My questions this year have to do with the same thing I asked about last year, which is around security. The residents, particularly in some of our seniors building, continue to feel that their buildings are not being adequately supervised, that response times are slow. My understanding is that there are 4 security officers on duty at any given point in the city. Is that true?
So in terms of, it's not exactly the number, Councillor. What is important to recognize, we have different aspects around safety services. And from a team point of view, we have what we call the static patrols. We have also the virtual patrols. So we're leveraging more and more digital technology also to decide where are the priorities. And in fact, we overlay with the Ottawa Police Services, with the NRT teams as well. So it's important to recognize that there are some elements where our teams are there ready for proactive community engagement when it comes time to response to trespassing, response to criminal act. This is where the collaboration with the police is very, very important. This year, I'm really proud to say that in 2026, we're launching a community stabilization unit, which will be more surgical for specific needs, because we know that there are some problem addresses in some of our buildings. And accordingly, it's important, and that would be a coordination and a strong effort with all of the agencies to make sure that we apply the necessary pressure to alleviate all of the undesired behaviors that could happen in a specific address. Having said that, also the other aspect that is important around safety, I do want to recognize Council and the investment made last year of $1.5 million. And in fact, we need more. I want to be honest. It's important to recognize that with the spike and the rise of mental health and addiction, we have seen trespassing in greater numbers, especially around main corridors, main streets around Ottawa. And it happens that some of our properties, amongst also other condo owners, other private landlords, they have the same issue. And it's important that we all work together to have a very concerted answer and response to the needs of the communities there.
Thank you for that. It's been asserted to me that the additional funding for security that Council provided last year didn't result in any greater number of staff, that it was being applied to operational shortfalls that were already in place. Last year, Council did give you additional funds for security. Did it result in the hiring of any further staff, security staff?
So we did hire some security staff, for sure. At the same time, like I mentioned earlier, we have other strategies around the digital aspect that we have increased visibility around the virtual patrols. And for us, that was very important. In the next stage, really what we're looking at, we call it the concierge services. It's really to have that type of static presence in a building. And this is something that is not budgeted as we speak right now, but that would be welcome, especially for vulnerable communities that they are living under some pressure because of the location of their properties.
Okay, and I'm glad we've had that discussion because it is critical. The residents of particularly the seniors geared buildings in my ward, and I know in other wards as well, are feeling very vulnerable and without enough boots on the ground in terms of responsiveness to systemic problems within their building. So you've noted that you're coming up with a strategy for the concierge type of service or a more targeted service, something that can respond to some of those systemic issues. Is it your intention to ask council for that funding in the next budget?
It is in the making as we speak, yes.
Okay. And I hope when that comes forward, colleagues, that you'll support it. It's a real quality of life issue when there are several bad apartments in some of these buildings that need to be addressed on a steady, ongoing basis. But I will say the partnerships that you've established with the Ottawa Police and some of the work that you're doing is slowly making a difference, but we do need to make that difference more quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Those are my questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the great work that you do. And you may have heard there was a conference this week in Edmonton, and certainly that was some of the highlights that I had with Minister Robertson. I had a great discussion with him about housing. I think that's a huge component, and the mayor has shown tremendous leadership with big city mayors as well. So we're hopeful as we move forward that we see more money for, obviously, infrastructure to support housing, but housing itself. We also have had a couple of great announcements recently in Nepean about seeing some of the retrofits using the Green Municipal Fund to be able to actually help advance those projects in a sustainable way. And finally, we're seeing new projects come online. We had heat pumps in some of our Gloucester housing. And when it comes to Ottawa housing, can you just highlight to us, is there a lot of funding opportunities you're seeing through the federal government, the Green Municipal Fund or otherwise, that you guys make use of to offset some of those costs?
Yeah, very important question, Councillor. OCH is always on the lookout for any nickels and dimes on any programs, wherever they are. I'll be honest with you. Having said that, we have to deal with different level of governments, and what is the most important aspect is alignment. We need alignment between the programs that are unfolding from the federal to the provincial to the municipal to OCH. And this is where the work in collaboration with the finance team at the city, with our finance teams, does allow, and I gave an example, unlocking $16 million at Ederington for the infrastructure as an example. When we talk about sustainability, OCH is one of the landmark, in fact, across Canada now, in terms of megawatt generated on our photovoltaic panels. Geothermals, we have 158 pillars at 450 feet in the core downtown generating geothermal energy. We are one of the rare ones doing it across the province and across Canada. In fact, Minister Robertson and also the Prime Minister were very, very impressed, surprised and impressed by how advanced we were. Having said that, I think it's important also to recognize that OCH is not alone. And not all providers in Ottawa have that capacity and capability to really undertake those. And this is where it's important that we all work together, also in the housing sector, to build on that capacity. Because one aspect that we tend to forget, affordability is not just about rent anymore. It's about utilities. It's about 20% now of your mortgage rent structure. And it's important that we invest thoroughly and seriously in those files. So again, thank you for your leadership and support. Great, and I would love to have an off-site conversation on FCM in the future. Congrats, by the way.
I have a feeling, and that will take place. And thank you to the chair and yourself for the tremendous leadership. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Stefan, for your leadership, and thank you to all the staff at OCH. I know there's a few here in the room, but probably many more watching on YouTube this morning. Thank you for all the work that you do. The scale of OCH, 15,500 homes, 33,000 tenants. That means about 1 in 30 residents in Ottawa live in an OCH building. That's pretty incredible.
That's
And we see now other cities coming to OCH looking for best practices, looking to us. We are leaders in the country and, well, maybe even worldwide, it's fair to say. So this is an organization that's come a long way in the past few years. You spoke about OCH's role in working with the city to deliver on the housing and homelessness plan. I think what stood out to me was you mentioned housing goes beyond construction. And I think you spoke to many of those things. Maintenance, renewal, acquisition, resident safety we've been talking about, and supports and partnerships. But what I wanted to ask was, as we look towards the end of this term and into the next term of council, what do you need from councillors? How can councillors help to make an impact and support OCH in your mission and goals?
Thank you, Councillor Gower. What we need the most in Ottawa right now and for OCH and for any providers is scalability. The demand is greater than what has been provided in the supply. We know that if you look at community housing, over the last 30 years across Canada, we have seen a deficit of construction of community housing. Right now, we are in a catch-up mode. So what we need is really that alignment to make sure that the city priorities and the delivery align with the 10-year housing and homelessness plan, that we alleviate the pressures that we are seeing, that it could be from any wait list to making sure that people have access to affordability. The other aspect also for council that is important to recognize, affordability has changed greatly over the last 10 years, where we're talking mainly about deep affordability. Now it's touching people in higher brackets of salaries and income. So again, it's important to recognize that we need to unlock a system that is being congested as we speak. And this is where council, you have the power to make that difference by seeking alignment of the dollars, making sure that federal, provincial, and municipal dollars align towards the same goal of building that capacity and making sure that we have more housing and more adequate housing adapted to the needs and frankly, the growing needs that we're seeing right now.
Okay, thank you. I do want to add, it's been a privilege serving on the board of OCH in this term of council. And again, thank you to all the OCH team for everything you're doing for affordable housing in Ottawa. Thanks, Mayor.
Privilege having you on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And I'm very proud of all of the OCH developments that are underway in my ward. I had a chance to tour one of the Gladstone Lands buildings and see a couple of the model suites, and they really are stunning. So I'm so excited for people to move in there, and also Rochester Heights. This is related to the security issue, but also to complex care. I know that other times we've had private conversations and you've come to council talking about OCH embarking on a complex care housing strategy. I know the number one issue related to security that I hear about in the Ottawa community housing properties in my ward are, you know, the challenges of living beside someone who is not getting the care they need. So they might be screaming in the middle of the night because they have an untreated mental health issue. And I know we've had some conversations about your desire to take a look at some of the more challenging buildings, including one in my ward, try to reorganize the floors so there might be security on some floors that is greater, where you might have people with specific needs grouped together. I'm just wondering if you've had any progress on that front, because I know that those big properties can be really unwieldy because of the degree of unmet need in those buildings. And also there could be 25, 30 service providers coming in and out of the same building, helping people, but without a cohesive care plan for the whole building. Thanks.
This is one of the most important questions related to mental health and addiction that any cities right now in the world is facing. For the first time ever, housing and health needs to work hand in hand together. It's not a question of we should talk to each other, it's a question of what do we do together. It's a big shift happening, and we're glad to see our colleagues from the healthcare sector being at the table. I'm proud to report that in some higher needs communities now we have nurse practitioner. In fact, we built a consultation room to ensure that the one in needs have the service that they deserve. And we know that especially around mental health and addiction, it's difficult for the individuals to seek support for different set of reasons. So we need to bring support at home. Our healthcare system was not designed that way. it was that you walk to the hospital if you are having a crisis. So again, I think it's important to recognize that having more and more service at home, and I'm proud to report that we will be having our Somerset East building with options housing, in fact, where we'll be delivering services, another one also coming at Somero with Salis, and one coming soon with the Royal Hospital as well. Having said that, in the current building, it's important, and again, maybe back to the question of the support of council, to allow to allocate resources where the needs are. We did 2 years ago in some buildings in your ward, in fact, ask the city permission to reduce the intake of individuals coming with special needs without proper system of supports. It did alleviate the pressure. Having said that, we see other elements now happening around trespassing that creates other sort of problems. So for us, we need to have that comprehensive solution, which is what I spoke earlier about, which is the team that would be, in fact, the community stabilization unit of OCH, and they will be there to really go surgical and pinpoint where the needs are, alongside with healthcare providers from Briere for seniors to Montfort Renaissance to any others. And again, I want to go back to the health and housing symposiums that we had early in April. More than 200 leaders of healthcare were in the room, all supportive of our strategy and inclusive of OCH in their design and future design for healthcare plan. So again, the continuum of housing is also a continuum of care, and the more we can encourage those conversations, and the more you can bring healthcare providers to the table with us, we will see a difference. We have a heart hub at Bronson going with Somerset, and that's another aspect. We are adapting to the new legislation and the new context. And for us, it's important, again, that we continue to work with the community health resource centers and all the groups involved in the healthcare spectrum.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And to my colleagues around the table, I hope that you understand that when we make those investments in supportive housing, that we don't forget those existing communities, because obviously we want that funding. It needs to be both and, not either or. We need that person who's untreated and unwell on the street housed with supports, but we also need to make sure that these Ottawa housing communities can be very fragile in terms of social peace, and people who live in those communities can't just afford to get up and move somewhere else. Right? So I hear all the time, especially from women who feel very vulnerable because they feel trapped in their situation. And if the security situation due to a lot of these untreated issues is not getting better, they don't have any other options, and that's really unfair to them. And it's unfair to OCH staff, because I just want to thank all of you. You're dealing with situations that you were never intended to deal with. So thank you for everything you do. Yeah.
If I may, unfortunately, because of the spike of mental health and addiction, it's no longer just one segment of the population. We're seeing it in condos, we're seeing it in private landlords. In fact, when I was speaking earlier about groups reaching out to us, they're looking at solutions to deal with mental health in private landlord settings, in condo settings. So this is a new trend. It's impacting all of us and any one of us. And it's important to recognize that we need to work a global solution with healthcare and housing being defined not only OCH, but also the broader housing system.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here today and for the great work that you do in our city. And as your presentation alluded to, the cost of housing is, there many things contribute to that. It's not just the bricks and mortar and the building of it or the financing or the buying the land and the development charges and all of those aspects. It's utilities, including energy. What did you say it was, 20% of the overall cost?
Yeah, right now you average around 20%. So if you have, say, take an example, if you have a rent of $1,000, typically around $200 would be the blended utilities, heating, cooling, internet, and all of those good things.
I was very intrigued when you touched on some of the energy projects that you've been engaged in. I think you said geothermal, and was there some solar involved in that as well? My question there is, I guess, multiple things. I'm wondering, with those projects and the generation of that energy, is that primarily to service the buildings you own and those residents and to pass on savings to them? Or is there a revenue generating aspect to these energy projects for Ottawa community housing? Is it part of the financing? Like, I'm wondering if you could just expand a little on the role of those projects in your operation.
Sure. Each and every build of OCH is very different. Some are inheritance. We have buildings from the 1800s, and we have the brand new one that we're building as we speak right now. So in that spectrum, the energy consumption, the energy requirements are very different, from being poorly insulated back in the 1800s to today about regeneration of energy. So that's the element. So on the aspect of selling, generating revenue, we cannot resell, but we can send back to the grid. So that's typically what is done. When you look at any efficiencies, in fact, are cost-saving measures. Keep in mind, we're still a nonprofit organization, yet we operate with a profit for a purpose. Our goal is to balance the book, generate a surplus, and give it back to the tenants each and every time. So those savings are really, really important. The aspect of innovation also around energy saving and consumption, we work very closely with NRC. We did many projects, and soon one will be announced. It's a very exciting one that will be happening in Overbrook. So again, it will be densifying, improving the energy membranes and envelope of the buildings, because they were built back in the 60s and 70s with a code that was radically different. So for us, the key element is about, first and foremost, investing in better efficiencies of the current stock and generating as much as we can back to the residents. One last concept that we did now with Communito, with a car sharing model that we have at Mekinac, we have it at Gladstone. We use our photovoltaic cells that we have on the rooftop to feed the batteries of the car for the recharging, so that way we don't touch the grid at all. So again, for the tenants, there's no gas charges or anything. The electricity is self-generated by OCH, and off you go.
Thank you very much for that. So there's just one point of clarification. It wasn't clear to me when you said it. So when you produce more energy than you use and it ends up going back into the grid, does Ottawa community housing benefit financially as a result of that power going back to the grid?
It's off of the volume, but at our level, we have massive volume. So we have spikes where other buildings are consuming way more than expected because of the age of the properties, and others that they are reducing our energy consumption. For us, we look at it from a portfolio point of view, but like I said earlier, we have high-performing buildings and we have very low-performing buildings as well. So
it kind of just averages out?
Good point.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thanks very much. Just a couple things to add. I note Councillor Troster's comments about sometimes in OCH buildings we have had situations where, as she mentioned, safety and security of residents is compromised. And I think one of the important things that we're focusing on right now at council is the mayor's commitment to doubling that rate of supportive housing, because that's really what is needed for these tenants. I have buildings as well where we have people that shouldn't be living in these buildings without support. So I think our commitment at council to doubling that rate and doing more hopefully in the future is really critical to that. I also serve on the board of Ottawa Community Housing, and very happy to been a member of that board for the last 3.5 years. When I was elected, I had about 1,500 units of OCH. I still do, but these buildings are not yet recorded as part of, we don't have funding yet, but I'm excited about 1245 Kilbourne and the opportunities there. We have an open house tomorrow night. That's a long-awaited purchase, and OCH is one of the partners there. And as well, you know, it's been publicly reported that 1460 Riverside is going to be developed as well with some of the same partners. So that will bring some newer units to my community. And just on that note, you know, we don't have funding in place, funding stacks in place for those buildings yet, but there's 700 units under construction presently. I'm assuming we could have much more if we had more funding from upper levels of government. And, you know, if we did get funding, I'm just curious, you know, the city is going to be reviewing those alternatives to RFPs for community housing development. How will this help OCH in achieving even more units?
Very important question, Councillor. As we speak, and I mentioned about the 700 homes, and right now we're ready to go and to unlock another 2,000. So streamlining processes, advancing together, making sure that we are, and I want to go back to by design, making sure that, again, we see supportive housing agencies coming in, being in the mix, being in the blend of our communities. Why? Because they bring skill sets that they are unique and sought after by many of our residents. The other aspect also that is important to recognize is when we have streamlining, we can fast track. And fast tracking for us means that the construction piece will operate exactly like any private developer in Ottawa. In fact, we compare notes with them. It's a very small, nimble team that we have, and we operate with contractors, which allows us to scale up or down. We will rather not go down and just scale up. So again, we're ready for it, and streamlining is very important.
Okay, thanks very much. And just one more question. Several years ago, Ottawa Community Housing had the ability to acquire 2 sets of townhomes with acquisitions, and it was hoped that there would be a stream of acquisition funding through Build Canada Homes so that there could be future acquisitions. Do you have any news on that particular piece?
From what we understand, it is still a federal commitment to have an acquisition fund. The last numbers that was presented publicly was $500 million. Yet they have not landed on the mechanism of delivery of the funding. There are still conversations happening at that level. I'll leave it to the federal government to provide more details, but it is a program that will be well received because many providers, not only in Ottawa, but across the country, are looking for acquisitions. It's another way to protect affordability. And again, it's important to recognize that in acquisition, also, you need to have capacity to maintain and preserve those assets because we saw examples in BC of providers doing acquisition and they had great challenges doing the quality repairs that were required by the residents. So as soon as you scale a portfolio, it comes with expertise and experience, and it's important that we bring all of those dimensions together when we look at acquisitions, as we did with our 311 units that we did 2 years ago.
Yes, thanks. Understood. Thanks for that clarification. Looking forward to our information session tomorrow night.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I am fresh back from a public health conference, so I just wanted to add a comment as chair of Ottawa Public Health, just to say that we so appreciate the work that Ottawa Community Housing did to co-lead the Health and Housing Symposium. You had said it so well, greater stability can lead to fewer crises, and that in turn supports the community and reduces costs for everyone. So it was a really motivating event. I hope that everyone has the opportunity to join in future years. And it just really showed that we do have strong organizations and strong leadership across sectors here in Ottawa who are working together already. And I think it showed to everyone who is there the potential that we do have to scale up. So not a comment, but just another word of thanks. It is critical to have OCH at the table for those important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to your leadership, Councillor.
Okay. Merci, Stéphane. Thank you, Teresa.
Mayor. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Is the item carried? Thank you, everyone. Moving to item 12.3, the long-range financial plan, tax-supported capital. And I know there is a motion, an amending motion from Councillor Gower, so maybe we can introduce that now and then open it up for questions and discussion. Councillor Gower.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bradley, for seconding this. Therefore, be it resolved that recommendation 2A in the staff report be replaced with the following text. Direct staff to explore and assess other financial and non-financial strategies, including but not limited to policy or process changes and reprioritization of existing funding sources to support service enhancements as described in this report. Consult with relevant advisory committees and seek recommendations from the appropriate committees of council before reporting back to council with recommended strategies and changes required to implement the strategies as part of the updated asset management plans and tax LRFP in the next term of council. And I guess the only context I'll add to that is this is meant to reflect a bit of the discussion that we had at committee last week around clarifying the process and governance for any policies or other elements that may change. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. I just wanted to ask a couple of clarifying questions right off the top of our Chief Financial Officer, just to be clear, because there's been some discussion about it. If this plan is approved by council today, will it lead to the closure of any city facilities?
Mr. Mayor, no, it would not.
Okay, so in fact, this is a step forward to investing more in infrastructure so that we're able to keep all facilities open and in some cases replace and refurbish existing facilities that are aging with newer either improved facilities or replacement facilities. Is that right?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Menard?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll start off just by saying I support the Gower motion. Thanks for bringing that forward. Staff have raised significant concerns about the state of Ottawa's infrastructure and that the gap has now grown to $229 million per year, every year. This is real and it has major impacts today and into the future. We are seeing more and more water infrastructure breaks than we've seen in the past. I think we set a record last year, both because this infrastructure has reached its end of life or it's breaking even before it's reached its expected end of life. We do have many community centers, parks, roads, and other infrastructure which require renewal, $10.8 billion worth. It's a daunting challenge and requires honesty, much of which is in that staff report, that there are some areas that I think we need some more light on. It also requires reflection. Which decisions are helping us dig out of that hole and which decisions are digging us deeper into that hole. And I would submit to you that the major increases in debt that we've seen, that $400 million in 2008 to $4 billion now on large public-private projects, for the most part, make up those funds, which have cost us in both legal costs, public trust, and accountability, should probably have some reflection. I would suggest that we need to be more careful on decisions on things like road widening and road expansion, given the need to repair our existing 6,000 kilometers of roads. That is the most costly of the infrastructure deficits. I would suggest that the largest urban boundary expansion in Ottawa's history in the past should be reflected upon, with consideration for the Hempson study that showed costs the City of Ottawa $465 per person each year to serve new low-density homes built on undeveloped land over and above what it receives from property taxes and water bills. I would suggest that the Lansdowne P3, which was raised last meeting, we are talking about $331.3 million in new debt. That should be compared to the $60 million in new debt that were asked for in front of us today for the LRFP. And it's a project where the Auditor General has vehemently questioned the revenue projections and also indicated strongly that those funds could have been spent elsewhere. And where we are now losing events and teams that were to continue back, that were going to help contribute back to our revenue projections, such as City Folk, that is gone from Lansdowne, such as Escapade, that is no longer going back to the public purse, such as the Ottawa Charge, such as the future horticultural public events, or the existing roof, which means, yes, more ticket sales. All of which brought in revenue, all of which are slated to no longer be doing so. This should lead to reflection. I would suggest that hundreds of millions of dollars of brownfield grants to private developers for which we don't have evidence are affecting change or is money well spent should probably have some more reflection. The large spending decisions which put increased pressure on our taxes is a big reason why we're here today, in my view. If the answer to these questions is let's just keep doing more of the same and digging a financial hole with those types of decisions, then indeed affordability for residents will decline further and further. More concerning is the response we sometimes get when suggestions are made to help solve those problems or do basic quality of life improvements for service. It is only then that we often hear about taxes and affordability. It's not affordable to keep these assets in this condition or push the decision down the road, nor is it affordable for community well-being if these are to be sold off or consolidated with the private sector in the future, which I take the point is not being suggested here today, but could come in the future or 2 years down the road when we hear about which assets are on the chopping block. Mayor, I thank staff for bringing the report forward. I appreciate the report and the honesty in there. I think we need to start reflecting on the decisions that we're making that put us into this position in the first place, and I know we can do better as a city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Council is being asked to approve a funding strategy without clearly being told what it means for the long-term condition of our roads, many of which are in rural Ottawa. As I reviewed the report, my primary concern was not whether we need a funding strategy, we clearly do. My concern is whether the strategy before us meaningfully changes the trajectory of our road network. In Ward 5, roads are not one transportation option among others, they are the transportation network. Residents depend on them every day to get to work, school, medical appointments, businesses, and more. We know that deferred road maintenance eventually costs more, and I want to better understand whether the investments proposed today are sufficient to improve the long-term condition of our roads or simply slow the rate of decline. So my first question is, through this funding strategy, what is the projected condition of Ottawa's road network 10 years from now? Are we improving? Are we maintaining, or are we continuing to lose ground on the state of our road assets?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. Regarding the investments that have been prioritized as part of the long-range financial plan, we also continue to use our risk-based prioritization framework as validated by the Auditor General in her value for money audit of road renewal. And so we continue to take a look at risks associated with the types of roads, classifications, and so arterials and collectors will be prioritized based on volume of traffic and the movement of goods and services between communities. And so the prioritized list is based on making sure that we are addressing those highest risks as part of the next 10 years.
Right. But what does that dial look like in terms of 10 years from now based on this strategy? Will more roads be in good repair? Will less be in good repair? Will the same number of roads be in good repair?
Mr. Mayor, we don't have that kind of level of detail or prediction that we can say with any kind of certainty what will the condition of the road network be in the next 10 years. But what I say is this is a funding strategy for the next 10 years. We continue to plan roads on a 4 to 5 year cycle. We have annual cycles. And so we continue to look at those priorities and reprioritize as needed.
Okay. Once all of these proposed measures are implemented, what annual road renewal and preservation funding gap will remain, and what impact will those have on the backload of road work across the city?
So the funding strategy compared to the 2017 LRFP, we took into account the backlog in funding that would accumulate, and we're making sure that we're actually covering the entire need in that 10 years. So funding backlog is not created.
But the gap in what we have to spend on infrastructure versus what we need, is that getting smaller as a result of these measures?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, is getting extremely smaller. So I think one of the key benefits of this plan is when you compare it to the previous plans, we are showing the backlog today, and we're showing a path to resolve that backlog in the next 10 years. So that's the key element that you should look at is that view, because in the past we didn't do that. So we increased the funding, but now we're showing the backlog. I'm being a little bit repetitive, but the plan addresses that over time because, you know, from a spending and a budgeting perspective, we're growing that. And the other element that I want to make sure is key as well, because it may come up in other discussions, This is a 2-year plan because we need to get the spending and the capacity up as well. And that's why it's, for the first time, we're coming with a 10-year plan with a commitment to come back in 2 years to make sure that these strategies are actually getting the results that we want to get.
Thank you very much. Obviously, as a rural councillor, I'm going to talk about rural issues. So given that rural residents rely almost exclusively on roads as their transportation network, wondering if you could provide some feedback or insight on how the impacts on rural communities have been considered in the development of this funding strategy and the prioritization of future capital investments.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can start on the prioritization. And so there is a recognition in our prioritization criteria around the overall percentage of the road network that's in the rural areas. Many of those roads also fall under the criteria of arterials and collectors. So it continues to take importance in our prioritization.
I'm happy to hear that, and I was happy that you brought your team out and met with mine and confirmed that we are, roughly getting the same amount of budget versus percentage of the road. So I was very pleased to hear that. Obviously, there's still a large gap that remains, and we need to be continued to focus on those outcomes. And for rural communities, roads are essential infrastructure, and the cost of delay does not disappear. It's passed on to future taxpayers at a higher price. So that's the piece that I remain most concerned about, but certainly appreciate the honesty of the report and some of the measures taken. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on what my colleague, Councillor Kelly, said there, I very much do appreciate the honesty and the sobriety in the report of addressing a significant concern. I have been speaking with my residents a little bit about what I understand from it, and I can tell you that there is a certain amount of anxiety over where it is not clear, where there is not a sufficient level of transparency on what might be the potential outcomes of this plan. The devil is in the details, and when it comes to what might be the consequences or changes, there certainly is concern over that. I'll be bringing an inquiry today to address that. I do have some questions. Can you explain to me the rationale behind labeling environmental improvements, accessibility improvements as service enhancements? As I understand it, these measures, and having just come back from the FCM conference myself, as I understand it, these measures are being seen, nationwide by municipalities as the new standard, even as fundamental, not necessarily add-ons. As I understand it, these kinds of improvements that we are addressing have also been the result of council policy. I appreciate the motion from Councillor Gower seeks to reintegrate relevant committees and council back into that decision chain, and I do hope that my colleagues support the Gower motion. Can staff explain the rationale for proposing this adjustment in the first place?
So initially, we were trying to carve out exactly what was creating a premium cost to our renewal budget. So right now, it's being funded by the renewal budget, and we just wanted to categorize and make it clear how much of a premium cost was being added and funded through the renewal budget every year. So now we have an idea of what that amount is. We need to come up with strategies to address it, but we will continue to fund it at the level we are currently funding it at.
And when you say we'll continue to fund it at the level we are currently, does that commitment exist beyond the first two specific years of the LRP?
Mr. Mayor, so right now we do on an annual basis about 26 million for specific service enhancements. That will continue for 27 budget, 28 budget. We're going to be back here in 2028, and part of that process that we'll recalibrate then through part of the Gower motion amendment here and through the report. That's what we'll look at in the next 2 years.
Thank you. So there's a lot of talk about affordability and council approved tax targets in the document, which I certainly do appreciate. There is, however, no talk that I could find of what it would take to properly address our infrastructure needs, at least from a revenue perspective. Instead of demonstrating options for recalibrating our revenue targets over the long term, the report suggests tighter risk management, for example. By my calculation, and we discussed this at committee, by my calculation, if we had raised tax revenues by an additional 1% over the last 4 years, or if there had been, hypothetically, a levy set aside representing that amount, we would have enough additional baseline annual revenue to cover a good amount of our annual shortfall in the order of at least $100 million per year. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that would be roughly correct. And as I stated at committee, you know, quick math, 1% is about 22 million. 4 years, a little bit of compounding. You're in that $94 to $100 million range.
Thank you. And you and I, Cyril, have spoken before about where the City of Ottawa ranks among major Ontario municipalities in terms of property tax assigned to homes of the average value. If we had, hypothetically, allocated 1% more than what we did, so not 2.5, but 3.5 and so forth over those 4 years, would Ottawa still be on the lower end of property tax assigned for average home values?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we would still be on the low side of the
Thank you, that is reassuring. Can you explain, so there's two elements of the recommendation that I do not grasp, and I'm not supposing there's anything that I'm concerned about, but I want clarity. Can you explain the reallocation of 0.15% of growth-related revenue? This looks like we are reducing the amount of money that is going to existing neighborhoods and prioritizing growth areas. We already have DCs to cover those costs. Can you explain why are we moving additional funds from general revenue to cover growth costs?
Mr. Mayor, so the rationale here is really aligns right into the premise of a DC to be effective, right? So from a DC perspective, they always look at a form of benefit to existing. So the rationale and the proposal here is that, you know, growth, typically we start off with a 1.5% growth factor for the upcoming tax year. Individuals buying new homes, that's where growth is. So growth is really new houses, new development, new things that didn't pay taxes before. They're using existing infrastructure. So it's really following the kind of the core principles of a DC perspective in terms of the benefit to existing. So those new houses and dwellings are benefit from the established roads that are already in place. So it's prudent to carve off a little bit for them to fund the renewal of those existing roads and infrastructure. That's the rationale behind that.
Okay, thank you very much. My last question is in regards to recommendation 4B. So recommendation 4 speaks about the agile capital budgeting approach for transportation planning, roads, and related growth. Recommendation 4B, delegating authority to the city treasurer to reallocate funding to projects as required. Can you walk me through that? It looks like, and it looks like it's a shifting of decision making on trade-offs that we might have to decide on from council to staff. Can you explain to me the rationale behind this? I do not generally have an issue with providing staff with latitude to be nimble and agile when required to. I just don't know what might be the possible trade-offs of that recommendation. What problem are you trying to solve with that recommendation?
So Mr. Mayor, I want to be crystal clear and transparent on this one. So every year, and I've talked about this ad nauseum in terms of how transparent our budget document is, and we actually break out service enhancements in our categories as well in the capital portfolio. So what this will allow, so we present the annual budget, and in that annual budget, if you go to the capital funding summary templates of any of the committee books, you're going to see a 4-year plan, right? So if you go to the PWIC committee right now, you go to the 4-year forecast template, you're going to see Greenbank, Brian Colburn, I think there's a baseline road there, CARP, et cetera, and there's a 4-year plan. So some funding in 2026 and some future subsequent years of more funding coming. So we're kind of adding funding to multiple projects all the time. So we're going to carve this agile approach out. So let's say, you know, Brian Colburn is moving down the process from a design, construction, et cetera, a little faster. You know, from a procurement perspective, the rule is that the full funding needs to be in place before we go to tender.
Yep.
This will give the ability to the CFO to, oh, I know that future funding is coming in 2027, so please proceed, team, and get this project done. From a cash flow perspective, recover from a cash flow because we don't spend a full budget in a year. That's what that gives me the flexibility to do that. That will be reported on an annual basis and updated every year with our budget. The next year falls into the plan. In addition, for transparency and clarity, we're also going to start including a 10-year plan. So not only will we continue with the consistent 4-year view, we're going to give a 10-year plan for those projects. So we still have a line of sight for the further out plan. Whenever that delegation of authority is used, that will be reported back to committee and council through my quarterly reports. So in terms of, transparency, clarity, it's there. It's fully there. It's fully mapped out in that process.
And any of the reallocations you are doing are on projects that have already been approved. It's not that you're inventing a new project. And at the same time, if I understand that correctly, you are making decisions based on opportunities or challenges that might come up. Perfect. Thank you. You are a wealth of information, Cyril. I'm going to rely on that wealth of information when you get my inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the team for their work. And they did give us a briefing, and I appreciate it. In an older ward, such as Bay Ward, we have aging infrastructure. It's everywhere. We are getting a number of projects, such as the LRT, but they actually require more infrastructure to go with it, such as sidewalks. And frankly, the roads are being torn up from heavy trucks and stuff. Please don't ask me about that CAA pole on Carling Avenue again. I get it every time. But we need to keep up with that infrastructure in those areas. And I just want to know if we're reaching out to our federal and provincial governments for aid as well, because we've clearly fallen behind, and I'm concerned about the infrastructure to get to places. For example, we're looking at the infrastructure to get from Moody Station to DND, for example, and sidewalks in heavy-duty neighborhoods in terms of use, like Wood Park. We're going to see more traffic because of the transit stations coming in. And we get told it's been kicked down the road, yet these things are coming very soon, and we'll have transit services, but we don't have the infrastructure to go with it. So how are we financing those, and what are the timelines?
So, Mr. Mayor, I think part of the question, the core questions in terms of federal provincial funding, we're always there whenever there's a program. Tammy's got a team dedicated to that, closely with finance team. And what I will say is we're pushing on the LRT upload. That's a core thing. So whenever there's a program out there for new funding grants, infrastructure, or anything for the city, I'll take every nickel I can get, because a nickel is better than no nickel. And then from an LRT perspective, we're continuing to drive that commitment forward.
I appreciate it, because we clearly have fallen behind. The glaring example in my ward right now is Belltown Dome, where a facility has been allowed to deteriorate, and now we're talking about replacing it. But there was no funds set aside for that, and we're talking about it could be 7 or 8 years before another facility is considered, if that decision gets made. This is frustrating, but people have to wait that long to have a facility if they go that direction. So why does it take so long?
Mr. Mayor, I'll start off. From a funding perspective, I think that's what's really, again, I'm using the words clear and transparent over and over, but it is clear and transparent that we do have a strategy in place. We're showing the backlog, and from the facility perspective, we do have a full strategy in place. I don't want to be whatever cynical, whatever. We are where we are, and now we have a good plan to get out of where we're at, right? And that's the key here, is we have a funding strategy in place that addresses all those items, and the facilities one being one of our bigger issues, I guess, that we're planning to solve.
Thank you. There are gaps as we move forward. We get projects done, but there's other projects that also have to go with them. As I've talked about, the infrastructure that we need to get to transit stations, active transportation infrastructure, and other things that come up. And it just feels like we're not ready for those extras. And I think we need to keep looking at them and not delay. So I appreciate the work. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Tierney.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for this report. Again, I won't go back into things like I feel procurement might be a good opportunity, but I do really respect the fact that the discussion is happening. I think that's important. I want to thank our GM Dan Chenier as well. Lots of misinformation has been out there, certainly, in regards to some of the facilities. I was shocked to hear they were going to close Earl Armstrong, and then I discovered, oh, wait a minute, we're doing lots of great stuff in there, and we've changed a whole bunch of sprinkler systems, and there's a whole bunch of things happening. So I think it's good to emphasize that while there's some information that is misleading, certainly the city is progressing, but we do have serious discussions ahead. Also, when it comes to infrastructure, I think similar to housing, by Mr. Chiguer mentioning we're not alone. This was the primary discussion all week at FCM, is the federal government has lots of money. People know to the penny how much they pay in property taxes, but they certainly don't know provincial or federal amounts. So we'll continue to advocate, and I want to thank you for the great work you've done on this. We'll have some good discussions in the next couple of years. But at this point, I think we have to work collectively together to find ways to make this all happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to address specifically the City of Ottawa's tax rate. I know one of my colleagues recently commented that the City of Ottawa's tax rate is relatively low to other cities. Giving an example of how increasing it, or had we increased it, we would still be relatively low. So I just want to confirm, is it correct that the 2025 municipal straight residential tax in the City of Ottawa was 1.074103%?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that's roughly in the ballpark. It might not be exact in my head, but it's roughly in the ballpark, yes.
And as a comparable, and I acknowledge you might not have this number in your head as well, an approximate is fine, that in 2025, the straight municipal residential tax rate for the City of Toronto was 0.601087%.
Mr. Mayor, yes, that certainly sounds like the ballpark again. Yep.
So when we look at the straight rate, if my house is worth $600,000, I'm going to pay 1.074103% in 2025 for municipal taxes. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if I'm posted or moved to Toronto, which I had to do once in one of my 7 moves, I'm going to port my mortgage, and I'm going to find myself a $600,000 house, and it might be a little further away, and it might be a little bit smaller, but when I pay my 2025 municipal tax rate, I'm going to pay 0.601087% in the City of Toronto.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yes.
So I acknowledge that there are other ways to balance and look at this as you're doing financial accounting and comparables across different municipalities. But to be clear, the money that comes out of a resident's pocket in the City of Ottawa is quite a bit greater relative to someone who lives in Toronto with the same valued house.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I just want to be clear from an assessment perspective, what we use is the BMA study. So the actual taxes paid, you're true, very true, it's the rate plus the assessed value. So there's 2 parts of the equation that gets to the outcome. So from a BMA study perspective is what we use as a metric. Ottawa's at the low end when it comes to comparable single family home, apples to apples on what you get for what you get. From that metric, yes, you may end up in a smaller house. You will end up in a smaller house in Toronto, and your taxes will be lower, but you're in a smaller house. So your asset is not the same as here, just from a...
So apples to apples, the same valuation of house to same valuation of house, the City of Ottawa does play more than it does in Toronto by quite a hefty amount.
From a tax, yes, correct. Yep.
That's the number that's real to people, because that's the money that comes out of their pockets. So the implication that the City of Ottawa and residents in the City of Ottawa are not paying a significant amount of property taxes is a false comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Carr.
Point of order.
Point
of order.
I think it would be a point of privilege if you're
Point of
responding.
privilege. Thank you very much. I'm first termer. I believe it was just suggested that the comment I made was a false comment. Well, clerk. Oh, thank you. I'll ask the clerk if you don't mind. I won't ask my colleague. Clerk, am I allowed to make a point of personal privilege based on that comment, which was to all ears in reference to my comments, which ended with a suggestion that the comments I made are a false comment? Is that grounds for a point of personal privilege?
Mr. Mayor, the procedure bylaw provides that when a member considers that their rights, immunities, or integrity has been impugned, the member may, as a matter of privilege, rise with a point of privilege, and upon being recognized, you would state the point of privilege, and the mayor will determine the question accordingly.
Thank you. I don't mind letting this go. I just, I think there's a difference of understanding of how taxes are levied, and I don't believe what I said was false. I think there's just a different understanding, and I would invite my colleague to have a coffee with me, and we can talk about our different interpretations of how taxes are assigned. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, okay, thanks. First, I want to apologize, as I generally would watch the meeting at which this was discussed and not deliberate at the council table, but I just have a few questions. You know, noting that it's an election year, I've certainly seen a lot of communications, alarmist communications about us shutting down facilities, and if we'd made different decisions, things, you know, we wouldn't be in the situation we are. I was also at FCM this past week, and certainly it dominated the state of our infrastructure across Canada, dominated the discussions of every political party and every municipality across Canada. So we're definitely not alone. Just on, you know, I don't want to relitigate Lansdowne, but if we hadn't gone forward with that project, would the asset renewal have been added to the over 10 billion that we have to pay?
Mr. Mayor, yes, if we didn't proceed, that's a city asset that would have added to the gap that we have in front of you.
Okay, so overall, there was savings with proceeding now with the deal that we had and the additional funding sources, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just with respect to the facilities, there's been a lot of speculation I've seen with respect to, you know, potentially shutting down a pool or community centers, ice rinks, and I think residents are concerned. They're alarmed, and I think that we owe it to them to be transparent about what's really happening here. Facilities are more than recreation centers, are they not? Do they not include office buildings, salt domes, service yards? Like, when you're talking about these facilities, it's all inclusive of those, correct?
Ms. Mayor, correct, and if you allow me, the service review is endorsed by the service review, or sorry, the facilities review was endorsed by the service review framework this term of council, and we brought forward a couple of those scenarios where we had a lease on Queensview that was an administrative building that we got out of that lease that sold. I think it was in the ballpark of $250,000, $300,000 on our operating budget. We also had a older facility in Goulburn, the old complex there, that was no longer needed or used. That was brought forward. Core fundamental points is that there's no service cuts in this plan. There's no plan to be service cuts from a facilities perspective. If and when there is a facility that might be, we have over 1,100 facilities, I believe, Dan, and if there's a small facility that's no longer required, the councillor in that ward is engaged at the beginning of the process. Before any decisions are made, that information would need to be brought forward to committee and council to give staff that approval. So again, this is about these historical assets that have no value to service delivery. They're sitting on idle land. That land can be developed, or that facility can be consolidated. There's a number of work yards out there that we can potentially consolidate and rebuild a new one that would provide better service. So the plan's actually supporting better service, not reducing service.
Yeah, thanks. You kind of took my last question, because I was going to speak to my experience being on that program and service review committee and being part of that facility rationalization activity and seen it firsthand. So you spoke to a couple of the examples where we'd rationalize facilities this term. Other examples are the community center on Pretty Street, the Robert E. Russell Fieldhouse in my ward, some that were demolished, such as the Westboro Academy in Councillor Plant's ward. Of course, Gammon House has been offered for affordable housing. In Councillor Hill's ward, the Jockvale Heritage School. So there's been quite a number of buildings that have been rationalized, not with a lot, you know, none with any public outcry or shaking up taxpayers thinking that we're shutting down major facilities. So it's been very valuable for me to understand, even as a first-time councillor, you know, what this really entails. Would it be fair to say that the activity that is being undertaken as part of this LRFP, what you're coming back to in 2027 and proposing, will be a larger version of this facility rationalization that was done through the program and service review?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if I would characterize as larger. It would be a continuation. I think it's just a process that we're going through when Dan and his team does the scope of, what's a viable candidate, I'll call it, in terms of a facility that's not, what's a facility that's not being used today, doesn't provide any real services that the city is providing, are ripe for either development or even affordable housing. When we get rid of some of these properties, I think Pretty Street was one of them, those were ones that the affordable housing team kind of took the opportunity to take as well. So there's different intersects here in terms of these opportunities, but that's really the plan, is to continue with the process.
Okay, thanks. So would you say that it's more than likely that we would get rid of the bowling alley in North Gore before we got rid of Earl Armstrong Arena?
Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Again, in the terms and the conditions, in terms of engaging with the councillor, I got to be repetitive here. Back to committee council, I'm not going to come, or me and Dan are not going to come and say, oh, by the way, we just got rid of a bowling alley. There's a process that we will follow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could we have a, so first of all, on the amending motion by Councillor Gower, is that carried? And then recorded vote, please, on the item as amended.
Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson? Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
No.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Councillor Lulov? Councillor Bradley?
Yes, with dissent on recommendation 3.
Councillor Lowe?
Yes.
Councillor Plount?
Oui.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Menard?
No.
Councillor Gower?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Troster?
No.
Councillor Devine?
No.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Hill?
Yes.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
No.
Councillor Desroches? Councillor Skolsky?
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe?
Yes.
16 yeas, 5 nays.
I'd 17.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, 17 yeas, 5 nays with an additional dissent on recommendation 3.
Okay, thank you. We will move to item 13.1 on the agenda, which is the zoning bylaw amendment for 500 and 508 Edgeworth Avenue. Councillor Kavanaugh, you wanted to make a comment about that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate it. To start, I want to thank the Wood Park Community Association, all the residents from Wood Park and the surrounding communities took the time to give feedback to planning staff in my office on this development. I understand the community's concerns, and I also want to acknowledge just how much construction and change has affected this community, who've seen over the past 6 years, stage 2 LRT construction, increased infill development, and ongoing transit-oriented intensification. I say it often, but it bears repeating. The opening of the Stage 2 West Extension, Bay Ward is getting 7 new LRT stations, and I know this is meant to be wonderful, but it's endless construction, detours, and inconvenience to the residents, and it also means that when the West Extension opens, neighborhoods in Bay Ward will be some of the most well-connected in the city, but also we'll see a lot of intensification. As the report notes, the development is 150 meters from Lincoln Field Transit Station, and the developer will be building them up to connect it to Edgeworth from the NCC paths. I know we're not at the stage for a planning process, but I want to flag that I'll be working with the applicant, city staff, and NCC to ensure that the path from Edgeworth to Lincoln Field Station is maintained year-round so that it's useful to all the community. We can't just have it for a few months. I'm also encouraging the developer to explore car sharing, Presto passes, and other incentives to encourage tenants to use alternative forms of transportation to alleviate traffic congestion in the neighborhood. And I'm also encouraged by Planning and Infrastructure's commitment to coordinate the installation of sidewalk on Edgeworth, which has been identified in the Transportation Master Plan with this development, so we don't end up with just a partial sidewalk to nowhere, and all residents of Wood Park will benefit from safe routes. I've also heard the residents concerned about the lack of community space in this area, from parks to green space to community gathering spaces. If this application is approved, we will be working with the applicant at the site plan control stage to ensure community space in the building is offered to the Wood Park Community Association and to explore installation of a children's playground for tenants. I'm also working with the city's Parks and Rec team to examine future amenities at McEwen Park following LRT construction and the NCC to ensure green space to the west of this development that is accessible for the community. This community has very much a lack of green space, and that's why they're so worried about a 24-story building going in on a residential street. Finally, I share the community's desire for collaborative design on the scope planning on construction on Edgeworth, where construction vehicles will be permitted to park and where they will not be, and the safety and sound mitigation measures for the surrounding community. And I look forward to working with the community and the applicant on the site plan control. I know that also the community has raised concerns about the capacity of this project on water and sewage, and I'd just like to have staff confirm again that this has been responded to, because that still is a question that arises. Thank you.
Through the mayor, I can confirm that staff have looked at the volumes, and we do not have a concern with this development proceeding.
Thank you very much. Again, I appreciate it. It's a huge change, and it just can't be emphasized enough how difficult it has been for Wood Park community, and I appreciate their cooperation throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cavanaugh. Is the item carried? Okay, moving to item 13.3, the status of amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act. And Councillor Troster, I believe you have an amending motion to replace the recommendation from committee. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's long. I apologize. I'll read it and then I'll say a few words if that's okay. Whereas the province's advanced provincial order in council 617/2026, which will amend the Residential Tenancies Act in a manner that addresses many of the policy objectives underlying municipal renovations bylaws, including enhanced tenant protections. And whereas staff have indicated that a municipal licensing regime introduced alongside new provincial legislations could create some overlap with new and concurrent provincial regulations during possibly similar timeline, potentially causing confusion that does not serve the interests of renters. And whereas staff will be reviewing the implications of new provisions of the Residential Tenancies Act to identify gaps and right-size the city's approach so that a rental renovation license bylaw can be well-designed, effective, and administratively sound at protecting tenants. Therefore, be it resolved that staff provide Planning and Housing Committee with the original draft rental renovation license bylaw on July 8, 2026, and highlight provisions that may duplicate or overlap with provincial requirements introduced through the provincial order in council and related to amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act, and be it further resolved that the rental renovation license bylaw review page on Engage Ottawa be updated to include the draft bylaw and any relevant supporting documentation that would have been provided had the original draft bylaw been advanced. And be it further resolved that the Planning and Housing Committee receive a comprehensive presentation from staff on July 8, 2026 that highlights provisions contemplated in the draft bylaw, results of consultation efforts, advocacy efforts of city staff to the province, changes advanced via the provincial order in council, a cost-benefit analysis of advancing the draft bylaw, including costs and benefits to the city, landlords, and tenants, any legal jurisdictional matters relevant for council's consideration. Proposed next step for reviewing the implications of amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act, including the report back timelines, whether council proceeds or not with the bylaw at this time. Be it further resolved that any individuals or organizations who provided comments to staff during the consultation process be invited to attend the meeting of Planning and Housing Committee as delegates or observers, and be it resolved that staff continue to review the implications of amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act as they come into force, as well as approaches taken by other large municipalities and continued feedback from residents with the objective of identifying gaps that may require additional tenant protection measures. And be it further resolved that should the analysis demonstrate that gaps exist within the provincial framework that could be addressed by the city, staff in the PPD and PRED provide the next term of council with options to further enhance tenant protections, including a thorough expanded scope to the rental renovation bylaw and additional demolition control protections for tenants. And be it further resolved that staff include amendments to the rental renovation license bylaw on the proposed work plan for the next term of council, with the results of the review to be brought forward in Q4 2027. I want to thank Councillor Gower for seconding and the Mayor's office for working with me on this revised motion. So just in plain language, we advocated to the province to make some changes to provincial law. They finally made some of them. There are still gaps that remain, and we wanted to give staff the opportunity to show us their work, the bylaw they were originally going to propose, but also highlight the pieces that probably aren't needed anymore, and to allow committee to have a fulsome debate. I was seriously concerned about withholding the final report and the draft language from the public because this has been such an intensive process. So many people have generously told their stories and given their time. And also the way the motion is written, we can also come back in the new term and take a look at how some of these new provincial changes are impacting tenants and see if we need to tighten things in the future. So I'm hoping for support for this motion because I believe that whether we need a bylaw or not and what's in it should be a decision of committee and council, and we deserve to have that conversation out in the open. And just to be clear, voting for this motion does not mean you're voting for the bylaw. It just means you're voting to allow it to be introduced and discussed on July 8th at Planning and Housing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Troster for all her work on renoviction. It's a huge topic, and it's how we're losing affordable housing as units get switched over from being affordable to becoming very pricey for the average person. I just had a question, and it was to do with the further resolved part of additional demolition control protections for tenants, which could be a separate category. And I'd like some comments on that because I did put forward to look at demevictions, which is also a huge topic. And I'd like comments on how we're going to treat that. Thank you.
Through the mayor, so there is a demolition control bylaw that exists in the city already that protects the demolition of residential buildings until you have a building permit. You can't get a building permit for a demolition unless you have a building permit to replace it, which means it's gone through a planning process or it is an allowable building and you show intent to actually replace those units. That only exists for a portion of the downtown, the urban transect in Ottawa. So when I read this motion and its expanded revised language, we would look to this process to consider whether or not that bylaw should be amended, expanded, or any portion of it brought into a licensing program should the City of Ottawa have one.
Thank you, appreciate it. And the key part is protection for tenants, and that is affordability. There will be units that will be replaced, but at what cost? And will they be able to still maintain that affordability? That's the key question, and I don't know if you can answer that now, but obviously that has to be looked at.
Through the mayor, I would say that the way the existing demolition bylaw, it doesn't speak to tenant protection, but because it makes the process slow down and be more public, that you can't get your demolition permit until you have one to build something, it has, our evidence shows that it has forced a conversation about what is happening with those residents. There are some live files happening right now that the transparency of that forces a conversation, but again, it only applies to a part of the city.
Yes, obviously that has to be expanded since it's extending right out to Bayshore, and it's going to happen more and more. Is that going to be brought into this report that's coming up on renoviction, or will that be treated separately?
So should council pass this motion before you right now, I would see that coming in the work that would move forward in 27.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Carr will attest, at committee, both she and I were traveling to FCM, and you know, the listening to the debate at committee and not really being able to talk to it was challenging. So I'm glad to see this here. I'm glad to see the work that's been done in the meantime between committee and council. I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, when we started that service review working group, one of the very first things we did was we asked Cyril Rogers, what are we doing as a city that is really the province's responsibility? Because we do not want to get in the business of doing things that are really provincial responsibility or federal responsibility for that matter. So we asked that question. So I myself am loath to try and get into anything that isn't really a municipal responsibility. That said, what Councillor Troster is trying to do here is look at what is a municipality's responsibility, and it is our responsibility to make sure that tenants and residents, really, we look at them as residents, are treated fairly. I will say that the Landlord-Tenant Board is broken in many ways. The Residential Tenancies Act needs changes. The province is trying to do that, but what I'm glad to see in this motion, and I really appreciate the work that Councillor Troster has done with staff, is the ability to, number one, have the debate in public about what staff were going to do and what changes they may recommend. So that, I think, is fair to staff for that work, fair to tenants, but also look at and take the time to see what the impact is of the province's new legislation. So I think that is really important to do here. So I like the fact that we will wait and get some results as well as looking at a cost-benefit analysis for what the impacts of this may be. So if this negatively impacts landlords' abilities to do renovations, legit renovations, we don't want to prevent that from happening. So this motion, I think, gets all of that, and I'm sure that Councillor Carr will make a comment on dem evictions, but it adds that in as well. So giving all of that, and like getting all of that in one motion, I think is great. So I'm really pleased to see this, and I look forward to when this comes back, and really giving some thought to what our role is as a municipality, and so that we don't step in the province's lane. So thank you, everyone, for this new motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I did not support this in January, and I will not be supporting it today. But that's not to say that I don't think that we should be focused on tenant protections, because I think that's really a core issue here that we need to be taking into consideration. I would agree completely with my colleague, Councillor Curry, who referred to the problems that are currently plaguing the Landlord-Tenant Board and the fact that that does need to get sorted out. So just to confirm, for staff, what was your recommendation that came to committee with regard to putting forward a bylaw on a renoviction issue? What was the original recommendation that you made to committee?
Mr. Mayor, staff brought forward an information report to committee. The initial motion was twofold. It was for staff to begin developing a bylaw review in the absence of provincial action, and also to report back to committee if the province were to act, which they did, and report back on an assessment of what was in those provincial changes, and that's what we provided in the report to committee per council's direction.
And as it pertained to a bylaw, your recommendation was?
There was no formal recommendation in the report, but as it pertains to a bylaw, we noted in the staff report as part of our assessment that it may be prudent to wait and see the effect of the provincial changes and the municipal licensing regime as a tool remains a available option.
Okay, so I appreciate the fact that you're actively looking at this. You have been actively looking at this ever since you were given the direction to do that. You're going to continue to actively look at this regardless of what direction you're given today or in July on this topic. I think there's no one around this table that's going to disagree that rent prices are an important issue. In fact, I would say they're the core issue. A tenant who pays too much rent is going to have subsequent second-order issues with affordability in general, quality of life in general. And then when they run into troubles, they will find more acute problems will follow. So I'm completely sympathetic to the concerns that really are at the core of this debate. I just think we're looking at the wrong tool to address it. In fact, we're looking at a tool that is within the province's jurisdiction. The best way that we can protect tenants is by setting the conditions for the city to have adequate rental stocks so that prices stabilize as low as possible for as long time as possible, so that we are resilient to inflation in the rental market. We just got the annual report from OCH. We should all want OCH to not have to expanded stocks because we want, as much as possible, people to be able to afford private market rental accommodations. By adding regulation to private industry, we are increasing risk to their portfolio. Increased risk makes them look at their projects and they are having more difficulty in making them pencil, making them make sense. We have just passed an official plan and a zoning bylaw within the City of Ottawa that's looking to intensify inside the Greenbelt along the Transitway. When our developers look at the financial implications of additional regulations, they're making the decisions to do the very things that I heard earlier today people don't want. Urban boundary expansions. If we want infill development in the city, we need to create an environment where it makes sense for people to renovate their basement, the empty nester whose kids go off to school. We want that person to take one of their 4 empty bedrooms and turn it into a rental place for a student. We want our larger developers to rebuild areas so that they can get more rental markets on the economy. That is the way that we address this problem as a city, and we have the tools to do that. I would encourage that we look really strongly at the concept of renovictions, demevictions, because as much as we all want the outcome of protection for tenants, I think we're inadvertently and dramatically increasing the actual problem by potentially causing, over the next 5-10 years, rent prices to continue to go up. And that should almost singularly be our focus on this issue, is trying to do what we can in order to reduce inflationary pressures on the rental market. So colleagues, I do certainly appreciate the efforts that have gone into this and the care that goes into this from the perspective of taking care of our tenants, because I certainly share that desire. But I would caution that in an environment where we're trying to say yes to housing, where we're being housing friendly, where we're adding policies to the city that allow us to grow stock, and we're doing a very good job of that, generally speaking, this term. I would encourage that we continue that record and try as hard as we can to advocate for policies that are going to keep prices as low as possible. So thank you for your time. I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't going to say anything, but then Councillor Curry alluded to the fact that I probably was going to speak to the demevictions. Councillor Curry is correct that we were listening to it in the radio as we drove, listening to it on the YouTube as we drove, not the radio. I learned that week that Councillor Curry doesn't like to listen to the radio as we drive, so which was a bit challenging for me, to be honest. But anyway, I just wanted to add that with respect to the new motion, I appreciate the fact that it considers demevictions. As a councillor representing the area that had Herongate, I was a little bit surprised when the discussions were occurring, and it occurred to me that this isn't even something that's covered, and that had tremendous impacts in my community. So I was concerned about the cost of introducing a program that wouldn't even consider some of the most vulnerable residents that my community has had impacted. So I just wanted to thank the mover of the motion for bringing it forward, and I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Gower?
Thank you. Just on this idea of risk and regulation and so on, we have done a lot in this term of council to help accelerate the construction of new homes and new apartments. As we should, it's our responsibility in this housing crisis, and there's a lot more that we need to do. But at the same time, I think it's reasonable to at least have a look at Planning Committee next month on what regulation at a municipal level would be appropriate. It does seem certain that there are a number of bad faith landlords who take advantage of the provincial rules around renovations and what is permitted. We don't know exactly the number, but it is significant, and there are people who are being forced to relocate when they don't have to. And in an environment where we have a very, very low vacancy rate and a rising rental rate, that puts vulnerable people in a very precarious situation. We heard last week at committee that the provincial regulation is by and large reactive. There may be a role for a limited scope municipal bylaw that allows us to be preventative and stop unnecessary displacement of residents before they end up in a precarious housing situation. So I was happy to second this motion so that at least we can have a look at what a potential well-scoped municipal bylaw could look like at committee next month. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Troster, would you like to wrap up on this? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to everybody who contributed to this very rich discussion over the last 3 years. Look, when I hear people talking about risk to someone's financial portfolio versus the risk of a senior losing their home, I want to tell you about the woman who came up to me last week when I was at Minto Park with my staff holding an event. She said, I'm a senior, I'm living on OAS, and every cent that I pay is going towards rent. And she's paying $1,400 for a bachelor, which is low in Centertown. And she said to me, if I lose this place, I will be homeless. And that is the exact portrait of the person that we are seeing constantly in my office who is impacted by rent evictions. Seniors, often women, who faithfully pay their rent for decades sometimes, who fulfill the terms of their rental agreement and who end up on the street, and some of them, yes, become homeless for the very first time in their lives because the landlord says that they want to do a renovation that requires vacant possession. They show no proof. They might threaten them, take cash, offer cash for keys, and then a week later they see the apartment online and all they've done is slap a coat of paint on. We all know someone that this has happened to. And look, I agree. We shouldn't have to do this if we had proper provincial vacancy control so that landlords couldn't raise the rent as much as they want between tenants. That would remove the incentive to evict. But at the end of the day, if people end up homeless, we pay to house them at great cost. It becomes the city's responsibility. And the best way to end homelessness is to prevent it from the beginning. The Housing Accelerator Plan, which I supported with some serious reservations, is a significant cash transfer to private development. We are reducing development charges and cash in lieu of parkland charges. We have incentives for affordable housing and private development, but the threshold for affordability is not anything that the senior I spoke to the other day could afford. We're losing 31 naturally occurring affordable apartments for everyone that we build. We are not keeping up. The private market is not keeping up. And so the goal of this motion is to have this conversation out in the open, to seriously contemplate what we can do and what we think is within municipal scope. It's not only a moral responsibility, it's financially responsible, because at the end of the day, we pay when people end up in the cycle of homelessness. And, we had the tenor of our conversation was very similar around the bubble bylaw just a couple of months ago. There are people who are saying that provincial and federal law were not helping people, and a lot of people voted to advance that bylaw because they felt that there was a role that the municipality could pay to fill the gap. So that is our job, and I really hope we can have this conversation in public. And for those of you who have doubts, I really encourage you to come to committee on July the 8th. I really encourage you to listen to the voices of people who have been affected by evictions of this nature, and to understand the way that the system is currently failing them, and to help us figure out a way that we can help them. I can't think of anything more important. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be voting on the motion, which if adopted would replace the committee recommendation. So if we could have a recorded vote, please.
Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney? Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Councillor Bradley?
Yes.
Councillor Lowe?
No.
Conseillère Plante?
Oui.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Menard?
Yes.
Councillor Gower?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
No.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Troster?
Yes.
Councillor Devine?
Yes.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Hill?
No.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper,
We.
Councillor Skalski,
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe,
Yes.
17 yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, thank you. Item 14.1 is the designation of 575 Island Park Crescent. Councillor Leeper, you wanted to speak to that?
Just a very brief commentary for those of you who watched some of Built Heritage Committee yesterday. You'll know that there is the Ethiopian ambassador's residence, which is currently vacant and deteriorating rapidly on Island Park Crescent. The embassy has applied for a waiver of the demolition control that the general manager was speaking about earlier, and that approval could be granted at any time. City heritage staff have a strong interest in preserving some of the heritage of that building, but if that demolition permit goes through, they'll have no leverage whatsoever to strike the appropriate level of preservation with the embassy. I did meet with the ambassador yesterday on site. And I just wanted to urge both the city and the embassy to come to the table in a productive and transparent way with one another, so that both parties are talking about their needs with respect to this property, and hopefully arriving at an agreement sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, colleagues, I do hope that you will support the notice of intention to designate, in order that city staff have that leverage in order to be able to require some level of heritage protection at a level that will hopefully be to mutual agreement of both parties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the item carried? All right, from the bulk consent agenda, we lifted the Adasoke project update. I believe Councillor Brockington, you had some questions?
Yes, Mayor, I do. I just want to make sure staff is here to answer the questions.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I wanted to focus in on the remaining work that is outstanding, and if you could provide council with a list of what work remains at this point.
Mr. Mayor, as mentioned in the report, the Adasoke project is approximately 85% complete. So a lot of the building exterior and enclosure has been finished. And what is taking place right now is a lot of work inside the building itself. It's not simple finishing work, but it's very detailed and intricate, yes, sorry, as part of the internal construction. So there's a lot of detailed interior elements that the contractor continues to work on. There continues to be custom millwork to be installed. There's a feature ceiling that's also continuing to be installed. There will also be artwork that will go along with that. And we continue to have architectural finishes throughout the building, which is very unique and have a lot of curves within it. We also have signature features as part of the building. So we have the Indigenous round rooms that are also being completed. We have a multi-story living wall, and also many exterior public spaces, and obviously some landscaping. I think also importantly, we're going to be moving into the full testing and commissioning of the building systems. So that does require very tight temperature and humidity controls that is very similar to museum grade standards. So we do anticipate that to be complex work that still needs to take place. So I think how we're describing the 15% is not necessarily about the volume of work, but the precision, the integration, and the quality that continues to be applied.
Okay, thank you. It's my understanding that the contractor is projecting the remaining work to be completed by year end, by December of 2026. Have staff assessed the time that each outstanding task needs to take to make sure that this revised timeline by the contractor is accurate?
Mr. Mayor, as part of our normal project management oversight, it does include a very detailed review and assessment of the contractor schedule. So the latest submission that we have is a December completion. So staff continues to do that evaluation and assessment. To date, we haven't seen what we'd say predictability or achievability. So we continue to assess this latest submission for that.
But the remaining tasks are not new. They would have been part of the original work plan for this site, which staff would have already tasked and know how long each task take. So what is new that staff need additional time to assess whether the time estimate is accurate? Like, all of these tasks would have been done probably a couple of years ago. So why is the delay in staff being able to determine whether or not a December timeline is accurate or not?
Mr. Mayor, the contractor is responsible for developing the detailed contracts and their work plan, and so it is really up to them to determine what they're able to do. So we cannot direct the contractor nor tell them to amend their schedule. So this is something that they have responsibility for. Now we do have the responsibility to review that, and to also how that gets done contractually is we have not accepted the contractual substantial completion date in the contract. So that remains an item of contention between ourselves and the contractor. And so as they update their schedule, it's at times they include more activities, more detailed, so it does require some time for us to go over that. It's not a contract that we develop, it's something that we assess with the contractor.
Okay, so just so I understand, if the city, who's the customer in partnership with Library and Archives Canada, disagrees with the timelines the contractor is providing us, there is opportunity to push back, have that refined, debate it until both sides agree on a timeline.
Mr. Mayor, that would be part of a dispute resolution process that's established in the type of contract that we have with the contractor, and so we would follow that process to evaluate any claims, including delay claims.
Okay. Is it possible to have a safe, soft opening before all remaining outstanding tasks are completed?
Mr. Mayor, this is part of the work that we're evaluating to determine that feasibility.
Okay, and when's the next expected update for council on Atasoke?
Mr. Mayor, we have a commitment to provide updates twice a year to committee and council on the progress of the Atasoke project. If meaningful information is available in between, then we would certainly come forward with that information.
Okay, and my last question to the city treasurer, should the city recoup any funds from the contractor in the future, will the first bucket that gets reinstated be the lines that we're drawing on today for the additional monies, mainly the debt and the library development charge debt? Like, who gets priority as far as money's going back?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so fundamentally we keep the ratio. So we follow the ratios today. So the ratio of, tax dollars, DC dollars, there's a little bit of library reserve dollars there, and the rest LAC. So those percentages will be pro rata refunded back.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just, on how this project was communicated initially, I understand that we talked about this as a fixed price contract to begin with, to begin the process. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I guess in staff's view, given we've communicated that on several projects in the past, and we sometimes see cost overruns even when it's a fixed price contract, how are we adjusting our procurement practices to ensure that this sort of thing is communicated up front in a better way?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I'd like to also clarify that, so there is a budget authority request that is part of this project, but it's not related to the contract. So we're not asking for additional money for the contract. What we are looking for is additional money because of, the project is delayed. So we have oversight costs that we need to keep in place and keep the team in place. And we also had possibly an optimistic contingency at the start of the project. So we're also making that adjustment. So we do believe in our procurement methodologies right now. There are more tools in the toolbox, and those are also other types of procurement methodologies that we continue to work with the procurement office and look at opportunities to do more of those.
I can appreciate some of those details. I suppose the issue is from a communication standpoint at the start of projects. We've seen it happen several times where we've seen on time, on budget, or fixed price contracts that haven't occurred. And obviously there's got to be a better way to communicate up front that there are sometimes flexibilities with budgets based on circumstances that arise. And going in with that initial number is no guarantee. And with some projects that pose more risk than others, it's even more important to do that risk analysis and have that flexibility. So appreciate the comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So is that item carried? All right, there are no in-camera items. Motion to adopt reports. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Mayor. That the report from the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation entitled Annual General Meeting of the Shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, OCHC, Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee Report 36, Built Heritage Committee Report 32, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee Report 24, Finance and Corporate Services Committee Report 36, Planning and Housing Committee Report 66, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of May 27th, 2026 be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried? Motions of which notice has previously been given. Councillor Menard's motion on transit reliability and service enhancements. Councillor Menard.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thank you very much for your support and your office's support on this. I will recognize that the city's held back a significant amount of funds from RTG as a result of service on the LRT. This stems from reinvesting some of those funds, and obviously the reliability of the system, and a recognition of what riders on bus and para and on the train have been going through. I appreciate that. This is obviously something that some of these will happen sooner and some of these will happen over time, but it is focused on increasing the reliability as well as making sure that there's familiarization weekends associated with the Line 1 East extension, as well as in the fall for Ottawa's 200th birthday, Bytown. So appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menard, for working together on that. I want to thank Councillor Gower as well for his help on putting this together. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and I certainly will be supporting this motion. I'm sorry, I just lost the wording of the motion itself. Bear with me just one moment. Thank you. The only one I contemplated whether I wanted to say anything today or not, but number 5, install heat tracing on the Line 1 overhead catenary system to avoid future multi-day LRT shutdowns at a cost of $2 million. That one galls. That is $2 million of taxpayer funds that could be used for any number of good purpose in Ottawa. RTG has a responsibility to deliver a certain number of train kilometers to us, and twice in recent years they have had prolonged multi-day shutdowns because of freezing rain on the overhead catenary in the area of Herdman. Why are they not installing the heat trace at their own expense? Why are we not able to compel them to?
Through the chair, through the mayor, they have agreed to take on the maintenance costs for the duration of the contract if we would put the install the equipment. Typically, what we do in the industry is we run the trains throughout the inclement weather. All right, we've had a number of discussions with them this year. We're actually putting a snow plan together with them to change their practices going forward.
It strikes me that the cost savings associated with what I'm going to assume are penalties associated with not delivering train kilometers should compel them to pay the cost of this. I am glad to hear that it sounds like we'll both put some skin in that game. That's better than I thought. But I just can't believe that we are going to spend $2 million on something that they should be putting in here to ensure that they can deliver the service that they've committed to. I will leave it at that. My piece is said. Otherwise, thank you very much, Mayor and Councillor Menard, for a good package of things that hopefully will be felt by riders.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. And just for clarity, this type of work is not in the project agreement. Is that correct?
Mayor, that's correct.
And if it was, we would be able to compel them to, obviously, right. But yeah. It galls.
Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Mayor. There are a number of, in the first clause of the motion, there are 6 items there. Some are capital, some are operational. I'm mostly curious about the operational items. I know the 3rd clause authorize the use of the transit operating reserve. Is that something we can sustain beyond? Is that something we can sustain like over the next number of years, or are we using the reserve, the operating reserve, for maybe the first little bit, and then it's going to be shifted into general operating expenses?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So right now, currently, it's not in the base budget. I'll frame it that way. So we need to use the operating reserve to use it now, to do the work now. Then we'll true that up if there's an ongoing requirement on a go-forward basis. That'd be part of the 27 budget process, and the base will be added at that point.
So in a way, we're sort of precluding a little bit of, maybe that's not the right word. In a way, we are setting ourselves up for, that is going to already be an increase to the base operating budget when the 2027 budget deliberations begin for transit.
Mr. Mayor, yes, it could be, yes. Yep.
It could, okay, yeah, that's fair.
If there's an ongoing requirement, yes, that we would have to true up the base budget, like in most things that we do. Yes, the budget would have to revisit.
Okay, so I mean, my worry, like I'm supportive of the principle of the motion. My worry is that if we use the operating reserve and then this enters into the general budget discussion, there's a very good chance that it can also be taken away. It can also be taken away. But other than that, yeah, that's where my head is at. I'm not sure if that was considered before, or when this motion is being put together, or I guess he's the mover, right?
Yeah, so I think the intent was there's been a series of funds held back from RTG. Obviously, some of those would go into capital, but a lot of this would go back to the city. I think more than what's in the motion. So there'll be some offsets. How that works in practicality through the CFO and where those funds end up going and to which buckets is not something that I've been privy to, but as I understand it, this will be less than that total amount of funding, and we wanted to reinvest in some reliability metrics. I'll also say that a lot of these things are things that just should be done, and particularly on the paratranspo piece and the operations that come with that. Which would be in the base budget. That's a fairness and equity piece. And then in terms of the suite of transit priority measures, as I understand it, that's a one-time investment for things like bus advance, bus lanes. Staff had outlined several details in the memo back to our committee of where this may end up going to immediately help reliability of service. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, no, that is helpful, and I know I agree that this is stuff that we should do. My concern is that I don't want us to put all these good things in there and then end up costing riders and property taxpayers in the long term. And last question on number 6, deploy a suite of transit priority measures requested by ward councillors. Is there not a list of these things that may be in the TMP or something similar to that?
Mr. Mayor, yes, there is a list of larger projects in the TMP, and then we maintain a list of more tactical projects, and that's continuously ongoing arising from our work on service reliability and in our discussions with councillors. So if this passes, we will have a little more resources to do more of the small tactical things that aren't listed individually in the TMP.
Okay, so it's sort of already in like with you. It's not going to suddenly open up to a call for projects or call for requests or something like that.
Mr. Mayor, it will allow us to do more of the smaller items that we identify through our ongoing work.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. I look at the first whereas clause of the statement of the motion, and it references the spalling issue, which the manufacturer and or maintainer of our trains contributed to, and yet we are going to be robbing the Transit Capital Reserve and the Transit Operating Reserve to help pay for the suite of initiatives. And I hope when you look at the final clause of this motion, it says that staff be directed to continue negotiations with RTG to recover associated costs that were successful, because we've been down this road about thinking we're saving some money in payments. We're going to use those savings immediately to augment service, and not knowing what the final outcome will be of those negotiations. So there's a risk here. I'm not saying that the content of the motion is wrong. I don't have a problem with that, because I do believe we need to augment service as outlined in many other areas. And I agree with Councillor Leeper's comment about the overhead cantonary system. We should not be paying for this. If it's silent in the contract, then obviously that's an omission that we need to address going forward. But I'm just concerned about raiding reserve funds when it's not the City of Ottawa that caused particularly the spalling issue. Some of the other issues I acknowledge are at our own control. We control our staffing. We control how many buses are on the road. We're getting a better handle on that. We are seeing the results of that already. Councillor Lowe asked my question about part 6 of the motion, and that's the transit priority measures requested by ward councillors. So I guess there's some opportunity to provide input to OC Transpo. $1 million doesn't buy very much at all, especially in the number of wards across the city. So, Mr. Scrimgeour, can you give an example of a priority measure not listed in the TMP that could be implemented?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. An example might be a bulb out, a bus bulb at a bus stop on a street that has curbside parking, so that the bus can stop in the travel lane and not pull into the bus lane. And where there's, in those locations where no changes are required to the ironwork, to the drainage on the street, they're not terribly expensive. There's one example. Another example might be changing the signage, changing the timing of a signal controller to detect buses and to favor bus operation through an intersection. The kind of things we're working on continuously with councillors all across the city.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll just add the pilot for additional paratransportal service on Friday and Saturday evenings. I think that will be well received, and I'll be very happy to see some metrics in that regard. And finally, my final comment, just with the free service weekends or at the end of September, and once Line 1 East Extension opens, we need to promote and advertise the heck out of those 2 weekends to make sure people are aware, East Enders are aware when that extension opens, to get them on that line on that weekend. But it would not be a success if people don't know that those weekends we're offering free service and are intended to get people, particularly riders who aren't on the line, out to see the beauty of the Line 1, see it working and ride it and get familiar with it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Is that carried?
I'm going to dissent on the operating reserve item.
Okay. Item 18.2 is a commemorative tree naming for David and Linda Darwin. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. For the next 3 motions, I don't have lengthy comments. I think it's fairly self-explanatory what we're trying to achieve. Just very, very much appreciate a lifetime of commitment to the community of Carlington by David and Linda Darwin, and we think that what's being proposed here is reasonable and in line with what the community and the Darwin support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that item carried? 18.3 is the commemorative naming of John Sankey Pollinator Garden. Is that carried? 18.4 is the commemorative naming of Anne Hegtveit Hill. Is that carried? 18.5, the deferral of development charges for primary care facilities. Councillor Gower?
Thank you. I won't read in the motion. There were some very small technical changes to some of the wording, but it has not substantially changed. But I would just like to say, by supporting this, Council would remove a small but significant financial barrier, and it will help enable the establishment of more team-based primary care facilities across our city. So I'd appreciate Council support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Is that carried? Next is the Accessibility Pilot Initiative with Stopgap Foundation. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks very much. I won't read in the motion. I just want to talk a little bit about it. First of all, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank your office for your support on this and for some of the more protracted discussions that we've had over the past few months over the fact that we need to continue to improve accessibility for our residents in Ottawa, whether it's from a physical standpoint, sensory or cognitive conditions. We do need to continue to move forward. You know, outside of this motion, I'll just mention that people with accessibility considerations continue to face significant challenges with housing, we have great inclusive recreation programming that's oversubscribed, lots of people waiting for it. People want accessible housing, they want access to work opportunities. So there's a lot more to be done, and I appreciate your office, particularly Mathieu Garbel, for entertaining me over the past several months to come up with a few suitable things. I'm very pleased to see that the one piece, the pilot for paratranspo to extend the hours to match line 1 was carried as part of Councillor Menard's motion, and that follows the last contribution that we had in the omnibus motion of last year, having seniors, free trips for seniors on paratransport 4 times a month, given that we offer that unconventional. So we'll continue to advocate for equity within, for the paratransport community. But this particular opportunity that has come up, and I want to thank the Mayor's office again for providing the funding for this, is an opportunity to explore a partnership with Stopgap, which was at danger of leaving the city. Stopgap provides accessible ramps for businesses so that people using mobility devices can access those facilities easier. So our shops and our shops and restaurants that aren't equipped will really benefit from this program. And Kyle Humphrey, who's in the office today, has sort of taken charge of that. And I'm hoping to bring Kyle onto my staff part-time to help administer that program and work with staff within economic development as we roll this out. So just a really good opportunity to provide some funding that will be able to, as a pilot, to have businesses have a ramp put in their business to access it and really improve things for people. So really excited about this. It's a step in the right direction. There's a ton of more work to be done, but was very happy to get the funding and for the support of all staff. And I will have to give a shout out to all of the wonderful staff that we have in the accessibility office. I work with Megan the most, but Tyler and his whole team are fantastic. So I don't really have much more to say, just that I would appreciate support on this because I think it's a fantastic initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, for your leadership on this. I'll point out that Kyle Humphrey is with us again. Hi, Kyle. Is that carried? Thank you, everyone. Noise detection technologies, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciated the opportunity over the last several years to work on a number of vehicle crime-related issues, up to and including going to the Federal Vehicle Theft Summit as the Deputy Mayor with Chief Stubbs, and last year having the opportunity with Councillors Hubley and Tierney to have the chance to talk with some industry who are involved in this space. So a lot of appreciation to a number of folks that have been involved, and certainly I'm interested in doing whatever I can to address whether it's vehicle theft, whether it's stunt racing, whether whether it's these modified exhausts. And I think this is a method that will cost us nothing and essentially get us the opportunity to do the research to figure out if there's a way that we can work with industry, leveraging some of the stoplight technology that we have right now to enter into something that can address folks with these excessively modified mufflers that wake everybody up down Strandherd Street. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see this motion from my colleague, Councillor Hill. The problems that he has in Barrhaven, I have in Ward 9. In fact, I can hear the noise from Barrhaven. So I'm very glad to see this. I have one question for the mover. Where it says that the motion will not cost any new funds, which I'm very, very happy to hear. At the same time, you do talk about new technologies and that there will be experiments or exercises to testing them out. Could you just please explain, perhaps if, support from an existing supplier or provider? Could you please just clarify how there are no new funds attached to this?
Well, I would envision that that industry who have the ability to do these types of things would be interested to support proof of concept type concepts, but I would defer that to staff to confirm or validate their intent.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's not uncommon that we work with the industry on testing devices and pilots, and often we're kind of used as the incubators for new technology, so very much aligned to what we do currently.
That makes sense to me. I appreciate that. And then my other question is in regards to the timeline. If I understand it, the report back end of Q4 2027, and I can understand that the work you might want to do will take some time, and certainly you already have a lot on your plate already. But I was thinking that if the report back from this demonstrates that there is a viable technology that can be used to address our problems, if the report back is only in Q4 2027, then I don't believe there would be an opportunity to implement some of this for budget 2028. And so if that is true, might there be any opportunity to report back in Q3 2027?
Mr. Mayor, I think we're very early in the process right now, and we're also dealing with different agency and jurisdictional issues right now. So this is not something that's commonly used. It's something that we would need to work closely with Ottawa Police also, because we may have the data, but then it's how did this data actually get used. So I think if we get to the point where we do have findings earlier on that we're able to implement, we certainly would not be holding those back.
With that in mind, and just in case your findings are that this is something that can be implemented, that there is broad support to this, and if staff were open to bringing it back earlier, would the mover, and assuming that the mover, if this works, would love to see this implemented as soon as possible, and if it were to be implemented in 2028, you would need to have it in Q3, would the mover be open to some kind of amendment that if it is possible to bring it back in Q3? I leave this to the mover.
So the mover would be willing to bring this on 2 years ago. So yes.
Okay, I don't know if a change to the motion is required.
Okay. All right. Thank you. With the understanding that staff will bring it back sooner if they can. Great. Thank you very much, and thank you to the mover.
Okay. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, thanks to Councillor Hill for bringing this forward. Like as he said, we would have liked to have seen this a couple of years ago. But this whole concept of having new technology being tried out by the city and its various departments is not new. It's just nice to see it continuing. The whole Area X.0, the autonomous vehicle shuttle project, the types of technologies that are on our garbage trucks and now snow plows. There's all kinds of amazing technologies that are being paired with the city. And I just want to highlight for councillors that this hasn't always been the case, but it's certainly happening more and more. And it's what we need to see as a city that is such a technologically advanced city and has so much brain power and technology in general. It's important for cities like Ottawa to show that we are working with industry, we're working with small companies to try out technologies and do these types of pilots, right? I'll just give you a very quick example of when you see this kind of thing happen, you then see an announcement like last week in the tech park where the provincial government paired with industry to end up contributing $6 million to the autonomous vehicle projects. using all kinds of technology from all kinds of companies right here in Ottawa. So this is how this stuff happens. At the same time, it's potentially solving a problem where residents are frustrated that the loud muffler noises are keeping them awake. People are street racing and changing their cars to be as loud as possible. You know, we all love teenagers, but you know, these things are highly annoying to residents. But great to see another example of city staff, particularly Public Works and the Transportation Department, partnering with industry. So thanks a lot, Councillor Hill. I was happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe.
Thanks very much, Mayor. You know, my ward's next to Councillor Hill's, and a lot of the issues with the mufflers and the racing. You know, when it leaves his ward, goes through my ward, then probably goes up through the Greenbelt. And I always get nervous when I look in the baby monitor when a really loud vehicle goes by and he just starts stirring a little bit. Anyway, whatever. My question here is, you know, I've had, you know, kind of similar conversations about this with police in the past, and they've talked about some of the issues, potential issues rather, with the legalities of this data. And I'm wondering if you know, if we do this, is it worthwhile to get some input from either the police or the province, perhaps some advocacy upwards, as part of this motion? I don't know if that would be to staff or the mover.
Mr. Mayor, I could probably chime in on that. I think for these types of initiatives, we would by default be working with both, with Ottawa Police because they do the enforcement. And if there is some opportunity and potential, also with the province, because ultimately we need to make sure that we have the legislative framework to be able to carry out what we're doing.
Okay, cool. And I guess we'll see it when it comes back in quarter four. Well, some of us might see it when it comes back in quarter four of 2027. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Councillor Hill. We've had discussions. Some of my concerns were around cost, and I'm hearing that there's no cost, which is good news. Also, Councillor Hubley and I have talked about this because we actually, in the past, had discussed gunshot technology and different things related to sound with Sergeant Gation back in the day when we were really pushing the envelope on that. And unfortunately, legally, you can't really enforce a lot of these things, so it becomes a challenge. So when it was texting and driving, Sergeant Gation and ourselves pushed very heavily on the province, and they put legislation in place. And while we were at FCM, even in Edmonton, the vendors on the floor were displaying this wonderful technology, but they were the first to come out and say, at this point, legislatively, and I want to put this on the record, no one's going to get tickets in the mail for loud exhaust pipes. That doesn't exist. There hasn't been a ticket issued. So this is about gathering data and collecting data and looking at the technology to assist our police service on where those hot points would be. Would that be correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, great. So no cost. It will help gather data, and I think that's certainly something that we want to do. And by the way, Edmonton, a very loud city. I've never heard so much modified exhaust in my life. It's unbelievable how loud it is there. So I don't want to get to that point. God love Edmonton, but frankly, if this helps generate the data where police can go out and enforce the laws that they're able to do and get people to stop modifying their cars. I don't know why people want to make their cars sound broken all the time. I've never understood any of this. But thank you for the work on this, and thank you for hearing my concerns, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it. We get noise on Carling Avenue quite a bit and other streets, but I'm just wondering, is no other municipality doing anything? This isn't just an Ottawa problem. Have we done any research on that and seen what's going on in terms of this kind of work?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of research that we've done on this. Obviously, with council's direction related to this motion, that's certainly something that we would be looking into. Again, I think the jurisdictional scan also needs to stay within Ontario, because that's basically, we're bound by Ontario laws. So that's really would be the limits of our scan at this point.
I think we're doing the province a favor, actually, since it would be provincial jurisdiction to enforce it. But no, appreciate it. But I just seem like there's likely going to be other places that need this help, and just wondering what they're doing on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hubely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think during this discussion, it's appropriate for us, through our representatives with the police board, Councillor Curry and Councillor Carr, that we say thanks to the police for the extra effort they're putting in this year to actually address this issue. And with the car rallies and the street racing, they've really crack down on that. You're seeing stories in the media about the number of people charged. I know firsthand from my ward that it's been very effective, the approach they've taken. So if you don't mind, I'd like to give them a shout out here for the efforts they're making while we look at new technology to help them.
Okay, thank you. Is the item carried? Thank you. Notices of motion. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And in the interest of time, this is just to dispose of properties through the Service Review Working Group. Therefore, be it resolved that Council waive Section 1.2 of the Disposal of Real Property Policy to permit the sale of the property to WMMI at below market value, recognizing the heritage and municipal constraints. And be it further resolved that Council waive Section 2.3 of the City's Disposal of Real Property Policy that requires the City to solicit offers from the public for the sale of City surplus lands, and that sole sourcing of viable parcels is not permitted. And be it further resolved that Council approve the allocation of a one-time grant of $250,000 to the WMMI from existing budgets. And be it further resolved that Council authorize the Director of Housing Solutions, Real Estate and Investment Services to enter into negotiations with Watson's Mill Manotick Inc. to finalize and execute an agreement of purchase and sale for the subject properties, which shall include an option to repurchase agreement and restrictive covenant regarding the use of the subject properties and any future transfer of the subject properties by the Watson's Mill Manotick Inc. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just before I read this motion, and I want to thank my colleagues for their support. Many of them that were out there, I think, witnessed that we're doing something kind of special here in Ottawa. 84 years since we've had somebody, it was actually Stan Lewis was the last mayor 84 years ago to be the president of FCM. So I just want to thank everybody that came out and supported. And I hope to do you proud, because I'm going to be a little noisy and getting some money for us, I hope. That being said, with these conferences, it generates a lot of money, so I'll be very brief. And whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is currently seeking bids for the member municipalities to host the 2029, 30, 31, and 32 annual conferences and trade show, whereas the FCM annual conference and trade show is a premier event for the municipal government, attracting over 2,000 delegates and exhibitors from municipalities and organizations. As a result of the significant economic impact for host cities, whereas FCM requires the members of municipalities to pass a council resolution for each submitted host annual conference and trade show, whereas the city will leverage Ottawa Tourism's expertise relative to the destination hosting capacity for the organization's authority to manage the full bid submissions associated with the host city responsibilities, and the 2031 and 2032 annual FCM conferences and trade show, whereas the hosting of FCM's annual conference and trade show will not require any direct funding from the city, but should Ottawa be selected as a host city for 2031 or 32 for the FCM conference and trade show, the city will be responsible for delivering delegates, study tours, and programs in initiatives for municipal projects. Therefore, be it resolved that Council formally support the bid to host the 2031 and 32 FCM annual conference and trade show. There be further resolved that the city, the council grants the authority to Ottawa Tourism to bid on the city's behalf for the 2031-32 FCM annual conference and trade show. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Gower, you have two commemorative naming motions.
I do. I'll just wait to see which one comes up on screen first.
I think it'll be the Tyson Lefebvre one.
Okay. Whereas Tyson Lefebvre was a philanthropist and community hero who was born with a rare genetic disease called Pfeiffer syndrome type 2, and whereas Tyson dedicated his life to helping others, raising over $1 million for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and whereas Tyson passed away earlier this year at the age of 25, and is remembered for his remarkable courage and determination, which earned him numerous awards, including Stittsville Youth Citizen of the Year, the Mayor's City Builder Award, and the Ontario Junior Citizen Award. Therefore, be it resolved that the name Tyson Lefebvre be approved as a future commemorative street name in Ward 6, Stittsville, and be it further resolved that the name Tyson Lefebvre be added to the list of available commemorative street names in designated wards on Ottawa.ca, and be it further resolved that costs related to the street naming, including blade signs and posts, will be funded as part of the future requests submitted by a residential home developer. Be it further resolved that any costs related with a subsequent unveiling will be funded through the councillor's office. And the next one, whereas Kalinda Joseph is a Canadian Paralympic athlete who was a member of Canada's wheelchair curling team that won bronze at the 2022 Paralympic Winter Games and gold at the 2026 Paralympic Winter Games, and whereas Kalinda Joseph was inducted into the Governor General's Curling Club in 2023, awarded the Community Leader Award in memory of Kathy Kerr in 2014, and is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2013. And whereas Kalinda is an outstanding athlete whose dedication, perseverance, and excellence in sport has brought pride and inspiration to our community, therefore be it resolved that the name Kalinda Joseph be approved as a future commemorative street name in Ward 6, Stittsville, and be it further resolved that the name Kalinda Joseph be added to the list of available commemorative street names in designated wards on Ottawa.ca, and be it further resolved that costs related to the street naming, including blade signs and posts, will be funded as part of future requests submitted by a residential home developer, and be it further resolved that any costs related with subsequent unveiling will be funded through the councillor's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If it was procedurally acceptable, it would say moved by Councillors Kitts and Skalski. We worked on this together and really appreciate your support on this. Whereas the proposed Alto high-speed rail project represents a significant infrastructure initiative that may have substantial impacts on Ottawa communities, and whereas residents, landowners, and agricultural operators have expressed growing concern regarding the potential routing of the project, its possible impact on homes, businesses, farms, and agricultural lands, as well as frustration with the limited information available regarding route selection, property impacts, and the process by which decisions will ultimately be made, including concerns regarding potential land acquisition, expropriation, and the adequacy of consultation with affected communities. And whereas prolonged uncertainty regarding potential infrastructure projects can create significant hardship for affected residents, landowners, and agricultural operators, underscoring the need for greater clarity regarding how route alternatives are being evaluated and how impacts to communities, farmland, and private property will be avoided or minimized, and contributing to stress, financial risk, and instability for affected residents and farming operations. And whereas the potential loss and fragmentation of prime agricultural land raises serious concerns regarding the viability of farming operations, local food security, and the long-term preservation of Ottawa's rural economy. And whereas the City of Ottawa's official plan identifies the preservation of prime agricultural land as a fundamental policy objective and recognizes agricultural lands as a finite and strategic resource that should be protected for future generations. And whereas meaningful public confidence in the project requires transparency, accountability, and meaningful engagement with affected communities throughout the route selection process, including clear evidence of how public input is considered in decision-making. Therefore, be it resolved that Council express its concern regarding the ongoing uncertainty facing residents, landowners, and agricultural operators in communities potentially affected by the Alto project, and call upon Alto and the Government of Canada to take immediate steps to improve transparency, clarity, and fairness, and public communication, and to strengthen public engagement and protection of Ottawa's communities and agricultural sector throughout the route selection process by 1, providing timely, clear, and proactive communication throughout the route selection process, including regular public updates on the status of route evaluation, anticipated project milestones, robust, good faith opportunities for residents, landowners, and agricultural operators to provide input, and a dedicated point of contact for inquiries, particularly as key decisions approach. 2, publicly communicating the weighted criteria used to fully evaluate route alternatives, including consideration of impacts on agricultural land, agricultural operations, private property, municipal infrastructure, community connectivity, environmental features, and potential expropriation requirements. 3, demonstrating how feedback received from residents, landowners, agricultural operators, municipalities, and affected communities has been considered in the evaluation of route alternatives and informing key project decisions so that residents and landowners are treated as partners, not afterthoughts, in decisions that affect their future. 4, recognizing that minimizing impacts to prime agricultural land, avoiding the fragmentation of agricultural properties, preserving the viability of agricultural operations, and minimizing impacts to private property, municipal infrastructure, and transportation networks, and maintaining connectivity within established communities and villages should be key objectives of any route ultimately advanced through the City of Ottawa. 5, treating expropriation as an exceptional measure of last resort to be avoided wherever possible and only following meaning engagement with affected landowners. Be it further resolved that Council directs staff through ongoing discussions with ALTO and federal representatives to communicate Council's expectations that impacts to agricultural lands, farm operations, private property, municipal infrastructure, and established communities and villages be avoided or mitigated, and that community connectivity be maintained. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be forwarded to ALTO, the Minister of Transport, local members of Parliament, local members of provincial Parliament, and neighboring municipalities that may be affected by the proposed project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kitts. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is a fairly straightforward motion about strengthening and formalizing relationships between Ottawa Public Library and the board. So I'm just going to read the therefore be it resolved clauses. So therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to continue to work collaboratively with OPL staff to develop a comprehensive memorandum of understanding between Council and the OPL board, outlining governance principles, roles and responsibilities, and the framework for shared services. And be it further resolved that the MOU include the development of the appropriate sub-agreements between the city departments and OPL divisions to support clear roles, responsibilities, decision-making processes, and issue resolution mechanisms, including clarity on processes for OPL board engagement in matters relating to library-specific funding sources. And be it further resolved that the MOU include provisions for regular review and renewal aligned with the terms of Council and the OPL board to ensure it remains current and responsive to evolving needs. And be it further resolved that the City Manager provide an update to Council on the progress of the comprehensive MOU between the City Council and OPL board by December 2026.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Whereas Mayor Mark Sutcliffe is currently leading a citywide initiative to build a more compassionate city, including highlighting simple acts of kindness that can make our city a more compassionate one, and individuals who continuously perform these simple acts of kindness are those so often at the heart of our neighborhoods. Whereas Teresa Testdent passed away on May 17, 2026 at the age of 94 after spending the last 64 years in the same home in Alta Vista, backing onto Reeves Park, where she was the heart of the neighborhood, providing advice and support to neighbors, regularly greeting and welcoming all. Whereas Reeves Park is located nestled behind Hillary and Orchard Avenues and Banbury and Reeves Crescents, behind 19 homes on East Street. Be it resolved that Reeves Park be renamed Testdent Park to remember the kindness and sense of community she brought to this corner of the community for 64 years. And be it further resolved that the cost of the sign at the single entrance and a plaque in the park be covered by the Ward 18 Cash and Leo Parkland budget and the Ward 18 office budget.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I will draw your attention to the notice of intent from the Byward Market District Authority to hold their AGM at our meeting on June 24th. Motion to introduce bylaws, Councillor Leeper.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings be read and passed.
Is that carried? Carried. Confirmation bylaw, Councillor Leeper.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of June 10th, 2026.
Is that carried? Carried. Inquiries, Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. The long-range financial plan tax-supported capital report notes that of the more than 130 facilities expected to reach or exceed their theoretical end of life by 2035, 40 facilities have been identified as warranting full replacement following the application of a priority lens. For information purposes, can staff please provide by the end of July 2026 a list of 40 facilities identified as warranting full replacement, including their ward location and primary use, and 2, a list of facilities that are currently considered single-use or single-service facilities for the purpose of facility planning, consolidation, or rationalization analysis. This information will assist members of council in understanding the city's facility portfolio and future facility planning considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Through discussions related to the long-range financial plan, it has become apparent that Council does not have consistent visibility into the condition, priority ranking, life cycle renewal forecasts, and funding requirements associated with recreation facilities, field houses, pools, parks, and other community assets. Access to this information is necessary to support informed decision-making regarding capital planning, life cycle renewal investments, and the use of funding sources such as cash in lieu of parkland. Can staff advise Council regarding the city's approach to recreation and park asset life cycle renewal, including 1, the city's process for assessing, ranking, and prioritizing recreation and park assets for renewal, rehabilitation, replacement, or removal, including how facility condition assessments are conducted and how renewal priorities are established. 2, whether current life cycle renewal funding levels are sufficient to support preventative renewal and timely reinvestment, and whether deferral renewal is contributing to increased future capital pressures or reliance on alternative funding sources. 3, the role of cash in lieu of parkland funding with the broader parks and recreation funding framework, including the extent to which it is being utilized to support rehabilitation, replacement, feasibility, or renewal projects associated with aging assets. 4, the city's approach to incorporating resilience measures into recreation facilities and field houses, including generator, quick connect infrastructure, and the potential role of community facilities as resilience hubs during emergencies, prolonged power outages, and extreme weather events. 5, whether the resilience hub model being explored through facilities such as the New Edinburgh and Wateridge Village field houses could inform broader citywide planning for future recreation and community facility investments. 6, the feasibility of providing Council with a recreation and park asset renewal forecast, including a chart or dashboard identifying major recreation and park assets, condition ratings, priority rankings, anticipated renewal timelines, projected funded requirements, and planned funding sources. And 7, whether staff have evaluated the use of modular or standardized recreational facility designs as a means of reducing construction costs, improving life cycle management, accelerating project delivery, and creating more consistent community amenities across the city, and whether opportunities exist to incorporate such approaches into future capital planning.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Might be a variation of the theme here. Given that the long-range financial plan for tax-supported capital establishes a priority-based approach to the renewal and replacement of existing municipal assets, could staff provide a more fulsome, plain language explanation of the prioritization methodology to be used in this exercise? Specifically, the report states that 99 facilities are currently rated in fair or lower condition, and that when a priority lens is applied, 40 facilities were identified as meriting funding for replacement. Could staff please provide A, the criteria used to prioritize the 40 facilities, B, the weighting assigned to each criterion, C, the full inventory of facilities assessed in this exercise, D, the results of the assessment for each facility, including any scoring, ranking, or relative ordering, if applicable, and E, the prioritization threshold that was used, i.e. the cutoff mark, to decide which facilities would make the list of 40 and which would not. 2, if no formal scoring, ranking, or relative ordering process was used in this exercise, could staff describe the methodology that was used to arrive at precisely 40 facilities and explain how facilities were found to merit funding for replacement versus not meriting funding for replacement? Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other inquiries? Motion to adjourn, Councillor Leeper.
That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of June 10th, 2026 be adjourned.
Is that carried? Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Thank you for joining us for today's media availability. Merci de vous joindre à nous pour le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. I will now invite each agency in reverse alphabetical order to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique inverse, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. Nous allons commencer par Fatoumata Traoré, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour,
You can use the mic. Thank you.
Désolée, je suis pas très habituée. Bonjour, Monsieur Sutcliffe. Ces investissements
Mayor
annoncés
Sutcliffe,
pour OC Transpo, pouvez-vous me
you
dire
were talking about the investment for OC Transpo. Can you explain what will change for the users of public transit? First of all, it is very important to mention that we offer a better service to Ottawa residents. Today, we've invested in solutions to improve OC Transpo services. This will improve the services of OC Transpo as well as Paratranspo. I think that residents want a better service. Now, for the Paratranspo user, it means that they will be able to use the service later on in the evening. As for OC Transpo, we will have free riding during some weekends in September. Now, we do have other investments. This will actually improve the service for Ottawa. Question? Do you think this is sufficient? Because the light train system encountered many issues, isn't it? Answer? We continue to improve the service. Mr. Laurier is here with us. He's working on improving OC Transpo services. Today's solutions, are not only the only measures that we've put in place. On Monday, last Monday, we've included 2-car trains in the system. It's at full capacity now on line 1. We've also put in place other measures to improve service. I'll give you an example. We have more buses on the road. Service availability also improved much in May 2026. Today's announcements are only some of the measures, but we're working on many at the same time.
Merci, thank you. We'll now go to Leah Larocque, CTV.
This is very similar to what was just asked, but you had mentioned in the past you want as many funds as possible reinvesting back into transit to increase the reliability of the system. So do you think things like close to $1 million for free weekends is a good use of money for the system?
Well, I think we have to strike a balance here, and we know that going forward, we're going to have big milestones like the opening of the Eastern Extension of Line 1, big events in our city like Canada Day and the weekend where we'll be celebrating Ottawa's 200th birthday. So to give people the opportunity to try the service out for free at those times, I think is a very, very powerful way to engage people, and we've seen it work before when we've done it in the past. People have used the service, and I hope many of them who were trying it for the first time decided to continue to use the service. So we're striking a balance between doing what any business would do when they have a new service or when there's a big moment to offer something to their customers, to give them an incentive to try the service, and at the same time investing as much money as possible in improving the service so they have a better experience.
My follow-up is for Mr. Laurier. What do you think of these initiatives? Do you think they will do enough to build back the system and get riders back on OC Transpo?
What I tell you is I'm thrilled by the support that OC Transpo is getting from council. You know, when you look at what we're doing, when in the customer first action plan, we talk about reliability of the system. And one of the mainstreams of that is new vehicles. So getting new high capacity vehicles is fabulous. Paratranspo as well, the service hours, you know, we're part of the plan and we talk about, you know, equity and the ability, quality of life, spontaneity, right? Allowing people to get out at night. So we're thrilled to see that. You know, the $1 million for looking at curb cuts or the signal priority, every little bit helps. So I'm feeling very comfortable when that was approved today.
Thanks. Next up, we have Andy Pinsent, CFRA.
Is it Andy or Andrew? Is it Andy or Andrew?
It's a long story. But
it was always Andy.
I'm an Andy. I was going to say,
yeah,
I'm an
it was
Andy.
always Andy.
You
and then
know
you hear it, you know, I hear on the radio it's Andrew. It's anyway.
Actually, anyway, long story. Ottawa Citizen didn't like the name Andrew. It sounded, or Andy. It didn't sound stuffy enough. But when I was writing for them, just on transit, Mayor, I think I've got a couple of questions for you. Just who is paying this? Is it the RTG or the city for free transit? And if the city is paying for this right now, is the expectation that RTG would compensate the city in the future?
Well, I might let Cyril clarify
Yeah,
this, but
fair enough.
just to be clear, you know, from my perspective, you know, we have had less than the service that we would normally have for a few months now. It's back to normal now as of Monday, but for several months we've been receiving less than the service we would expect to receive from our contractors, and so therefore, when that happens, we pay them less. So we save money. It's not the situation we want to be in. We'd rather pay the full amount and get the full service, but we save money. So we're taking some of those funds and reinvesting them in better service for our users.
And Cyril, I didn't mean to bug you so early, but is that kind of the idea here? Is that, you know, the money being withheld from RTG is currently in negotiations. So the city is fronting this through reserves or whatever else the motion says for budgets. And then the idea was we would try to recover that later. Is that kind of right?
That is clear. Yeah, that is what the motion outlines. So we're using the transit operating reserve for the operating requirements, and we're using the transit capital reserve for the capital requirements of the motion. And those investments are going directly into transit. And if at a future date there's, you know, negotiations, that process will follow due diligence. Those funds, any funds received, will go back into those two reserves.
And my other question for you, just while we're talking, it was about the infrastructure long-term financial plan. It notes that development charges are significantly lower right now. The revenue that's coming in from them, I think the average annual gap, about $53 million right now in DC supported growth needs and funding. We've now got Bill 17 from the province that just passed in the last week. What impact do you anticipate the lowering of those development fees to have on this long-term financial plan? Are we going to need more money essentially to fill the gap of this funding? Or is the expectation that whatever the province and federal government gives us will be adequate to cover that shortfall?
The expectation is, yes, that the provincial federal funding will keep us whole. That's always what we're always striving for. On the DC side, you know, we're filling in. There's always a benefit to existing in the city component funding, and this long-range financial plan makes that requirement whole over the 10 years from the city side of the equation.
And are you working with a certain estimate that you're expecting to get for? I know this is new with like the requests. I think the deadline is next week. But is there a certain estimate that you're working on, or are you just looking at the idea that there will be something to kind of fill or offset that revenue loss, if that's clear enough?
So to be clear, there's a lot of work being done. There's extensive analysis being done. We're not there yet. You know, once we're there, that information will come back to council.
Do you expect it to have a significant impact on the city's finances moving forward?
That analysis is ongoing, and the goal is to make sure that we're whole, and any funding strategy that we'll present will be highlighting those strategies.
Thanks, Andy.
No problem.
If we have time for another round, we'll come back to you.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. We'll go to Nathan Fung, CBC Radio. No. Okay. Arthur White-Crummy, CBC. Thanks.
This will be for the mayor. So we have 2 free weekends for transit going forward and some, you know, measures to improve service. But it seems to me like the people that were most affected by the disruptions would have been weekday commuters, right? Who relied on the buses coming to get to work on time and who faced the crowding on the platforms because of the LRT disruptions. So why didn't you, as a seconder of the motion, decide to go down the route of refunds for people who were the most immediately affected by those disruptions?
What I hear over and over again from the residents of Ottawa and the users of OC Transpo is they want a more reliable service. So we're investing as much as we can in improving the service, and we're starting to see results with the new buses on the road. We're seeing reliability numbers increase. And for the first 2 weeks of May, the numbers I saw, they're some of the best numbers we've had in the last 6 or 7 years in terms of reliability. So I don't think the residents of Ottawa want a $4 refund if their bus isn't on time. They want their bus to be on time. So we're investing in better service and more reliable service, and I think that's what our residents and OC Transpo customers expect. Oui, oui, oui. Alors, je ne sais pas le mot pour refund en français.
I don't know what's the word for refund in French. Remboursement. Wonderful.
Okay.
Let me start again. This is what I've heard from users and Ottawa residents. They want to have a reliable service and not necessarily a reimbursement when there's an issue. We are investing in solutions to improve reliability. We've saw good results in the first 2 weeks of May. So OC Transpo reliability was at a record level. It's been, these are good numbers, the best one in 6 or 7 years. We continue to invest to improve the service. And I think this is what are expecting residents and users.
So part of the package of improvements is these transit priority measures, $1 million for that. Not a ton of money considering how much some of these projects can cost. How are you going to prioritize that and determine which of those projects will go forward? And can you provide some concrete examples of what you might pursue? Yes.
Hi, thank you for the question. You know, we have ongoing capital projects, as Patrick talked about today, signal priority, bump outs in the right of ways, queue jump lanes, right? This amount of money will be added to that, and then we'll report back to the committee on what additional work we're going to do with the funding that's available.
Thanks.
Andy, we can go back to you for your second question. Thanks.
Clearly, I'm still getting my sea legs here. Mayor, just a follow up on the development charge question. Do you have any expectation of how much that Ottawa would be receiving, and are you confident that it will be enough to offset the revenue loss for things like infrastructure and growth related infrastructure?
I would say two things about that. Number one, I think the way it works is we're going to work with the federal and provincial governments to make sure that for any reduction in development charges, we are getting back as much of that money as possible, and we are as close to being made whole as possible. So it's not like we're just going to take a risk, cut development charges, and wait and see what happens. This is going to be a part of a process where we're working together with the other levels of government on an agreement that if we reduce development charges, will be funded to a certain level. But to answer the first part of your question, I do the math on $8.8 billion of funding over the next 10 years. Ottawa is a certain percentage of the population of Ontario. I think if you do the math, we should be getting about $600 or $700 million worth of infrastructure funding from the federal and provincial governments. I'm going to be fighting for Ottawa to get our fair share of that $8.8 billion, which to me is $600 or $700 million. And we're going to be doing everything we can to get that infrastructure funding so we can invest in infrastructure and build better communities.
I believe that was your motion last week, right? To push for the maximum allowable funding. I think I've got that right?
I don't remember. I mean,
maybe I'm
we can
confusing
go back
two
to you on
things,
that.
but yeah, I thought that was part of your motion last week. Just pull for the maximum. And
Thanks,
just,
Andy.
Yeah, no problem. A couple of quick ones for Tammy, or we're done?
Perhaps we can take them offline?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.